Hey, blue hair, what's your rank? Barista or Instagram influencer? The words slice through the Joint Maritime Intelligence Center like a blade through silk. Commander Knox Savage, 6 feet 4 inches of pure muscle, wrapped in navy dress blues, stood center stage among 30 elite personnel gathered for the morning's classified sonar demonstration. His finger pointed directly at the young woman with striking neon blue hair, standing silently beside a bank of computer consoles. Laughter erupted across the facility like fireworks in a midnight sky. The sound bounced off reinforced concrete walls designed to contain secrets worth billions, mixing with the hum of advanced submarine warfare technology that surrounded them. Digital displays showed classified sonar patterns stretching across the Pacific, but every eye in the room focused on the girl who clearly didn't belong. Ember Sterling stood 5 feet 6 inches tall, her athletic build evident even beneath the loose civilian clothes she wore. Porcelain skin seemed almost luminescent under the harsh fluorescent lighting, creating a stark contrast with her vibrant hair color. Defined cheekbones remained perfectly still as waves of mocking laughter crashed over her. Natural makeup couldn't quite hide a small bruise near her left temple, a faint purple mark that suggested recent contact with something unforgiving.
Look at you.
"I think
Pathetic.
baby girl got lost
You're
on
a
her way to
disgrace
the
that
coffee
uniform.
shop,"
I don't care
shouted
who you
Petty
know, you
Officer
follow
Phoenix
my rules
Reed
or
from
you're
his
done.
position near the sonar analysis
clear?
station. "Maybe
You should
she's
let
here
go
to
of my
take our
arm,
Instagram
Commander.
photos for recruitment ads."
You're making a
Savage moved
scene.
closer, his combat boots creating an intimidating rhythm against the polished concrete floor.
Really hit him hard.
Advanced submarine detection systems worth more than
Ace
most
is not
people's
gonna like
lifetime
this.
earnings hummed around them. But his attention remained laser-focused on humiliating the obvious civilian who had somehow wandered into their classified world. "Come on,
You were ordered to
sweetheart,"
stand down,
he pressed,
Commander. Explain
his
your
voice
actions.
carrying the kind of
priority
authority
was
that
the
had
asset.
commanded respect in
The mission
combat
parameters
zones across
changed when
3
they
continents. "This is a restricted facility. We're discussing submarine
Did you see
warfare
the Admiral's
technology
face?
that could sink enemy
I
fleets.
can't believe this is happening.
Surely you can understand why we need to know exactly
Admirals,
what
the
a
current force
TikTok
deployment
princess
leaves
is
the
doing
flank
in our
exposed.
war room."
If we reroute
Ember
the 7th
finally
Fleet through the
moved.
HA gap,
The
we can
motion
secure
was
the
subtle,
objective by
barely
0600,
perceptible to
Commander
most
Savage.
observers, but she adjusted her posture slightly and shifted her weight to the balls of her feet. No one noticed except Master Chief Wade Hunter, positioned
We
near
need
the
clear
back exit.
documentation of the
Something about
bruising on
that
the
small
forearm.
movement triggered a
Nurse, if you
frown
could place
across
the
his
ruler
weathered
next to the
features,
ACE
as if he'd
bandage.
recognized
Doctor.
something
Hold still,
familiar
please.
in the way she positioned
making
herself for
contact?
potential action.
Not yet, Admiral.
"Answer me,"
He's approaching the
Savage
target building
continued,
now.
his tone
We have
hardening.
ACE on him.
"What's your security clearance level? What's your rank? Or are you just daddy's little girl who got lost while he's working with the grown-ups?" The facility's advanced computer systems continued
We
their
can
endless
insert here at
calculations,
0400,
processing
avoiding the coastal
submarine
radar
movement
array.
data from across the
Confirmed.
Pacific Fleet.
Secure the marina
Classified
extraction point.
information worth billions flowed across dozens of screens.
I'm here.
But the real drama unfolded in the space between a
What's the
commanding
status?
officer and a young woman who
We have
seemed
incoming.
completely out of place. But in the next 20 minutes, everything would change completely. The morning had begun like any other at the Joint Maritime Intelligence Center. Built into a hillside overlooking San Diego
behind your
Bay,
back.
the facility represented
under
the cutting
arrest.
edge of American submarine warfare technology.
Operation
Reinforced
Ace is
walls
officially a
contained
success.
rooms where the
All
Navy's
objectives
brightest minds worked
A
to maintain
testament to your
underwater
team's precision,
supremacy
Commander.
against increasingly sophisticated
Gentlemen,
foreign
this data
threats.
confirms the effectiveness
Today's
of the
demonstration
ACE system.
focused on
The
new
passive
sonar
arrays
detection
detected the contact at
capabilities
20
that could
miles,
identify
well outside
enemy
the threat
submarines at unprecedented distances. Who is this blue-haired girl? A lost civilian? A spy? Or something else entirely? If you're already
We have the
suspicious that
facility
there's
in
way
sight.
more to Ember than meets the
Preparing
eye,
for final
smash
approach.
that like button and subscribe, because the truth about her identity is going to shock everyone in that room. And I mean everyone. You won't see this coming. Security Chief
classified
Vaughn
zone.
Cross
You
had
are not
noticed the
authorized to be
unusual
here.
visitor
Who gave you
during
these
morning
codes?
I
checkpoint
accessed them
procedures.
myself, Commander.
The young woman
The
presented
anomaly is
credentials
escalating.
identifying her
You are
as
testing
Emma
my
Sullivan,
patience, specialist.
daughter of civilian
Stand down.
contractor
I know
Marcus
what you
Sullivan.
did.
But something about her
I'm not
documentation
moving.
felt off.
You are
The
out of
paperwork
line,
appeared
specialist.
legitimate,
That
yet
bruise proves
Cross
your
couldn't shake the
liability.
feeling that
Look at her.
important
The Great
details
Blue
were
Hope is
missing.
scared.
Miss
Your
Sullivan,
opinion is noted,
Cross had said
Commander.
during the
I
initial
told you,
security
I am ready
screening.
for Ace.
I don't see your
That
father's
incident was
name
an
on today's
anomaly.
authorized
The review board
personnel list.
disagrees.
Can you
You're
explain why
grounded
you're
until further
here?
notice.
Ember had responded with practiced ease, her voice carrying just the right amount of nervous uncertainty. He told me to meet him here after his meeting concluded. I'm supposed to wait in the visitor area until he's finished with whatever classified work he's doing. The explanation seemed reasonable enough. Civilian contractors frequently brought family members to military facilities, though usually not to classified demonstration areas. Cross had
I
processed
want
the
this
visitor
room
badge
cleared.
reluctantly,
Now.
noting
Everyone out.
unusual elements in her background check results, but finding nothing technically disqualifying. Now, watching Savage's aggressive interrogation unfold, Cross wondered if he had made a serious mistake. The demonstration was supposed to showcase new sonar capabilities developed for the Virginia-class submarine program. Admiral Ridge Blackwood had invited select personnel from multiple commands to witness technology that would revolutionize underwater warfare. The room contained submarine captains, sonar technicians, intelligence analysts, and special operations personnel who needed to understand how these advances would affect their missions. None of them expected to spend the morning questioning a civilian's presence. "Let me make this simple for
Ace
you,
is not
blue
gonna
hair,"
like this.
Savage said, stepping close enough that Ember would have to crane her neck backward to maintain eye contact if she were actually looking at him. "This facility processes classified information about submarine operations.
Explain your
We
actions.
track enemy movements,
priority was the
analyze
asset.
acoustic
The
signatures,
mission parameters
and
changed
coordinate
when they
responses to
engaged.
underwater threats. Normal people don't just wander in here
Did you
because
see the
they're
Admiral's
bored."
face?
Ember's breathing
I can't
remained
believe this
steady,
is happening.
controlled. 4 counts in through the
Admiral,
nose,
the current
4
force
counts
deployment
held,
leaves the flank
4 counts
exposed.
out through the
If
mouth,
we reroute the
4
7th Fleet
counts
through the
empty.
HA gap, we can secure
The
the
pattern
objective by
continued beneath the
0600, Commander
surface,
Savage.
invisible to everyone watching, but somehow present in the stillness of her shoulders. "I have proper authorization," she said quietly, her tone
We
stripped
need
of
clear
emotion or
documentation of the
defensiveness.
bruising on the forearm.
"Authorization from
Nurse,
who?"
if you could place the ruler
Savage
next to the
commanded.
ACE
"Show me your
bandage."
Right away,
orders.
Doctor.
Show
Hold
me your
still, please.
security clearance.
Is he making
Show me
contact?
anything that explains
Not yet,
why
Admiral.
someone who looks like
He's
she
approaching the
belongs at a
target building
music
now.
festival
We have
is
ACE
standing in a
on him.
facility that could be a target for foreign intelligence services. The room's attention had crystallized completely around their confrontation. Sonar technician Sage Brooks paused his
We can
equipment
insert here at
calibration to watch.
0400, avoiding
Lieutenant
the coastal
Dakota
radar
West
array.
shifted uncomfortably
Confirmed.
near the
Secure
coffee
the marina
station,
extraction point.
clearly troubled by Savage's aggressive approach, but uncertain whether junior officers should intervene in such
What's the
situations.
status?
"My authorization is
We have
classified,"
incoming.
Ember replied, Savage's face flushed with irritation. Several other personnel exchanged glances, their expressions mixing amusement with growing discomfort. The entertainment value of watching Savage demolish an obvious imposter was beginning to feel less satisfying as her calm responses defied their expectations. "Classified?" Savage repeated,
A
his
testament
voice
to your
dripping
team's
with
precision,
contempt.
Commander.
"You know what I think? I
Bowman,
think you're
this data
lying through your
confirms the
perfectly
effectiveness of the
straight
ACE
teeth.
system.
I think
The
you
passive
conned your
sonar
way in
arrays
here
detected
yesterday
the
with some
contact at
sob
20 miles,
story,
well outside
and you're
the threat
trying to pull
envelope.
the same stunt today." He gestured toward the others. "Anyone else think this is complete nonsense?" A few uncertain nods emerged from the crowd.
We have the
SEAL
facility
Team
in
Leader
sight.
Colt Pierce, uncomfortable with the
Preparing for final
entire
approach.
situation, suggested, "Maybe we should wait for the demonstration to start officially. The briefing officer will sort out authorization issues." "No." Savage's
This is a
voice carried
classified
the kind of
zone. You are not
finality that had
authorized to
ended
be here.
arguments in
Who gave you
combat
these
zones.
codes?
"I'm sorting this out right now. This is
The
a
anomaly is
classified submarine
escalating.
warfare facility.
testing my
We
patience,
process
specialist.
information about
Stand
fleet
down.
movements,
I know what
enemy
you did.
capabilities, and technological
I'm not
advantages
moving.
that keep American sailors alive.
You are out of line,
We don't
specialist.
let random
That
people
bruise
wander
proves your
around because
reliability.
they claim to
Look
have
at her.
mysterious
The Great Blue Hope is
authorization."
scared.
Your
He
opinion
reached
is
out
noted,
suddenly,
Commander.
grabbing
I
Ember's
told you,
arm
I
above
am
the
ready
elbow.
for ACE.
His fingers
That
dug into
incident was
muscle
an
with enough
anomaly.
pressure to
The
cause
review board
discomfort
disagrees.
without crossing
You're
legal
grounded
boundaries.
until further notice.
"You're leaving. Now." Ember didn't pull away or struggle against his grip. Her breathing maintained its steady 4-count pattern while she looked at him with those same flat measuring eyes that revealed nothing about her thoughts or intentions. "I am authorized to attend this briefing," she said with mechanical precision. "You are interfering with a lawful operation." The phrasing struck several people as odd. Master Chief Hunter's frown deepened
want this room
as he
cleared.
processed
Now.
language that sounded
Everyone
more
out.
military than civilian. What kind of contractor's daughter talked about lawful operations when being manhandled by a Navy commander? Savage leaned closer, lowering his voice to something that might sound reasonable to casual observers while missing the underlying threat. "Listen very carefully, Princess. You have 2 choices. Walk out of here right now, and I forget
Look at
this
you.
happened,
Pathetic.
or stay
You're
and
a
I make sure
disgrace to that
everyone in the
uniform.
Navy
I
knows
don't
you're the
care who
kind
you
of
know, you
person
follow
who
my
doesn't
rules or
respect
you're
security
done.
protocols.
Is that clear?
Your choice."
You should
4
let go of
counts
my
in,
arm,
4
Commander.
counts held, 4 counts out,
You're making a
4
scene.
counts empty. The breathing pattern held steady. "I am staying," Ember
She
said
really hit him
quietly.
hard.
That was when Savage shoved her backward.
Yeah,
the push
Ace is
wasn't
not
a
gonna
punch
like
or a
this.
strike, but a 2-handed thrust to her chest with enough force to send most people stumbling. Ember's back hit the concrete wall with an audible impact that reverberated through the facility.
ordered to stand
Maps
down,
and technical
Commander. Explain
displays
your
mounted
actions.
nearby
My
shivered
priority
slightly
was the
from the
asset.
vibration, but
The
she
mission
didn't cry
parameters
out,
changed when they
didn't
engaged.
gasp. didn't bring her hands up defensively or show
Did you
any
see the
indication
Admiral's
that the
face?
collision hurt. She simply
believe
stood
this is
against the
happening.
wall, weight distributed evenly through
Admiral,
both
the
feet,
current force
and
deployment
continued
leaves the
looking
flank
at Savage
exposed.
with those
If we
same
reroute the 7th Fleet
emotionless,
through the HA
calculating
gap, we can
eyes.
secure the objective by
Knox,
0600,
Master
Commander
Chief
Savage.
Hunter's voice carried a warning edge. That's enough. Savage ignored him completely. His focus remained entirely on the young woman in front of him,
We need
trying to
clear
find some
documentation
crack
of the
in whatever
bruising on the
armor she'd
forearm.
wrapped around
Nurse,
herself.
if you could place the
You're not
ruler
even
next
going to
to the
defend
ACE
yourself?
bandage.
Right away,
What kind of
Doctor. Hold
person
still,
stands
please.
there and takes
Is
it
he
like a
making
piece
contact?
of furniture?
Not yet,
Another
Admiral.
SEAL operator,
He's approaching the
younger
target
and
building now.
clearly uncomfortable,
We have ACE
leaned
on
toward
him.
his colleague. This is weird, man. She's not scared. She's not angry. What is she? His companion shrugged uneasily. Maybe she's got some kind of psychological
We can insert
evaluation
here at
training.
0400,
Could be a
avoiding the
research
coastal
candidate
radar
studying
array.
stress responses.
Confirmed. Secure
Savage
the
reached
marina
out
extraction
again,
point.
this time grabbing Ember's shoulder and giving it a shake that would have
here.
rattled most people's teeth. I asked you a question.
What's the status?
What kind of person stands there and
We
takes
have
abuse
incoming.
without fighting back? Ember's lips parted slightly. When words emerged, they carried the same measured deliberation as everything else about her responses. The kind who knows when to fight and when to document.
behind your back.
For half a heartbeat,
under arrest.
something flickered across Savage's expression. Uncertainty,
Operation
perhaps,
Ace is officially
or
a
recognition
success.
that he'd
All
just
objectives
heard
met.
something that didn't fit the narrative he'd
testament to your
constructed
team's precision,
about helpless
Commander.
civilian girls who wandered into
Gentlemen,
military
this data confirms
facilities.
the effectiveness
But
of
then
the
his ego
ACE system.
reasserted
The
itself,
passive
and he
sonar
stepped
arrays
back,
detected the
dusting his
contact at
hands
20
together
miles,
like he'd
well
just
outside the
handled
threat
something
envelope.
distasteful. Document this, he said, and backhanded her across the face. The slap cracked through the facility like a gunshot. Ember's head
have the
snapped
facility
sideways
in
from the
sight.
impact, and a
Preparing
thin
for
line of
final
blood
approach.
appeared at the corner of her mouth, where the inside of her lip caught against her teeth. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The advanced computer
This is a
systems
classified
continued
zone.
their
You are not authorized
calculations,
to be
but
here.
human
Who gave you
activity
these
in the
codes?
room
I
ceased
accessed them
completely
myself,
as everyone
Commander.
processed
The
what they'd
anomaly
just
is
witnessed.
escalating.
Then
You are
Ember
testing
straightened
my
slowly,
patience,
turned her
specialist.
head back to
Stand
neutral
down.
position,
I know what you
and
did.
raised one hand with deliberate precision
I'm not
to wipe
moving.
the blood away with the back of
You
her
are
thumb.
out of line,
She
specialist.
examined the red
That
smear
bruise
for
proves your
exactly 1
liability.
second before
Look at her.
lowering her
The Great
hand
Blue
back
Hope
to her
is scared.
side.
Your
She didn't
opinion is
speak.
noted, Commander.
She didn't cry.
I told you, I
She
am
didn't
ready
even
for
look
ACE.
particularly hurt.
That incident was an
Instead,
anomaly.
The
she stood
review
there
board
studying
disagrees.
Savage through
You're
what seemed
grounded
like
until further
bulletproof
notice.
glass, cataloging his actions with clinical detachment. Master Chief Hunter took an involuntary step forward, then stopped himself. Every instinct screamed that this situation had crossed dangerous lines, but he couldn't articulate why. The girl should be reporting this incident. She should be angry or terrified or demanding to speak with someone in authority. Instead, she stood there like she was watching
I want this
Savage
room
through
cleared.
a one-way mirror,
Now.
taking
Everyone
notes on
out.
his behavior for some purpose that remained completely opaque. Nothing to say? Savage pressed, emboldened by her silence. No threats to report me, no tears, no demands to call your daddy? Ember's breathing continued its steady rhythm. Are you finished, sir? The question hung in the air, loaded with implications that nobody in the room fully understood
Look
yet.
at you.
Something
Pathetic.
about her
You're a
tone
disgrace
suggested
to
this
that
wasn't
uniform.
submission
I don't
or
care who you
defeat,
know, you
but
follow my
rather the
rules
kind
or
of
you're done.
professional patience that
that
came
clear?
from people accustomed to
You should let
waiting
go of
for
my arm,
exactly the right
Commander.
moment to act. Admiral
making a
Blackwood
scene.
entered from the adjacent corridor at that precise moment, carrying a tablet and looking harried.
She really hit him
Behind him
hard.
walked 2 staff officers and a security
Yeah,
specialist,
Ace is not gonna
all
like this.
focused on their electronic devices and the morning's agenda. Briefing pushed to 1300 hours, Blackwood announced without looking up from his tablet. Admiral Morrison's flight got delayed
You were
by
ordered
weather
to
in
stand down,
Norfolk.
Commander. Explain
Everyone
your
clear
actions.
the demonstration
My priority
area
was the
except
asset.
essential personnel.
The mission parameters
Savage
changed
pointed
when
at
they
Ember,
engaged.
his confidence returning with the presence of senior authority.
Did
Does
you
that
see the
include her,
Admiral's face?
sir? Because I've been
can't
trying to
believe this is
determine her
happening.
authorization level and getting nowhere.
Admirals, the current
Blackwood
force deployment
finally
leaves the
raised his
flank
eyes from the
exposed.
tablet,
If we reroute
taking in
the
the
7th
scene
Fleet
with the
through the
rapid
HA gap, we
assessment
can secure
skills
the
that had
objective by
earned his
0600,
stars.
Commander
He
Savage.
noticed Ember's position against the wall, the slight swelling beginning around her mouth, the bloodstain on her thumb. His expression shifted through several emotions
We need
before
clear
settling on
documentation
something
of the
that looked
bruising
like
on the
controlled
forearm.
anger.
Nurse, if
The
you could
observer
place the
roster
ruler
is
next to the
classified,
ACE
he said
bandage.
carefully,
Right away,
his
Doctor.
gaze
Hold
moving
still,
between
please.
Savage and Ember.
making contact?
Personnel will be informed
yet,
of their
Admiral.
assignments when
He's
the
approaching
briefing
the target
commences.
building now.
He
We
waved
have
a
ACE
dismissive
on him.
hand toward the exit. Out! All of you. Return at 1300 hours, ready for the full presentation. Military personnel began filing toward the exit with the efficient movement that characterized professional operations. Gear clinked softly as they gathered equipment and documents. Conversations resumed in low murmurs as the crowd dispersed, but many glances returned to Ember, still standing motionless against the wall. Master Chief Hunter passed close to her on his way out, keeping his voice barely above a whisper. "You okay, miss?" Ember didn't turn her head toward him. "Yes, Chief. Thank you for your concern. What just happened was out of line. You should report this through proper channels. I will handle it appropriately." The phrasing was perfect, regulation compliant, completely devoid of actual information. Hunter hesitated, wanting to say more, but Savage's voice called from the doorway. "Hunter, move it!" The Master Chief left reluctantly, but not before noting how Ember's response had sounded less like a civilian complaint and more like a professional acknowledging jurisdiction over an incident. Military-grade laptops with encrypted drives and reinforced cases handle classified data processing for mission-critical submarine warfare operations. The demonstration area emptied steadily. Ember remained against the wall for another 30 seconds after the last person departed, alone in the space designed for strategic warfare planning. Advanced sonar displays continued their endless monitoring of submarine movements across the Pacific. But the human drama had temporarily concluded. She walked to the nearest water fountain, rinsed her mouth carefully, and exited through a different door than the one used by military personnel. To any security cameras reviewing the footage later, she appeared to be exactly what her credentials claimed: a civilian contractor's daughter who had experienced an unfortunate misunderstanding with aggressive military personnel. But Master Chief Hunter couldn't shake the feeling that he'd witnessed something far more complex than a simple case of bullying. The hours between morning and afternoon briefings passed differently for various participants. Savage spent them in the base gymnasium, working off frustration through an aggressive weightlifting session that attracted attention even among fitness-obsessed Navy personnel.
I want this room cleared. Now.
His workout routine resembled combat preparation more than stress relief, as if he were anticipating some kind of physical confrontation. Admiral Blackwood used the time for secure communications with higher authorities, discussing security protocols and personnel verification procedures that seemed unusually urgent for a routine technology demonstration. His conversations remained classified, but staff members noticed an increase in encrypted message traffic and requests for expedited background checks. Ember Sterling spent the break period in her temporary quarters, a small room in the visiting officer facility that came equipped with basic amenities and secure internet access. To any observer, she appeared to be resting and reading technical manuals related to submarine operations. The reality was considerably more complex. Her laptop, which appeared to be standard civilian equipment, actually contained encryption protocols several levels above what typical Navy personnel ever accessed. The login process required biometric confirmation, multiple authentication codes, and a physical key that remained on her person at all times. The screen that illuminated when security checks completed showed information that would have shocked everyone who had witnessed the morning's confrontation. Operation Deep Watch. Mission classification, Black. Target, $4.7 billion submarine sonar technology theft ring. Authorization level, Rear Admiral 07 minimum. Cover, status, deep insertion, non-attributed personnel.
Hold still, please.
Ember scrolled through files that painted a picture of systematic espionage, targeting America's most advanced underwater warfare capabilities. Someone had been stealing technical specifications for submarine detection systems, sonar algorithms, and acoustic signature analysis programs that represented decades of research and development. The intelligence value to hostile nations was incalculable. Traditional investigation methods had failed to identify the source. The thieves were too careful, too well connected within military procurement networks. They had relationships throughout submarine command, friends in the Inspector General's office, and reputations that made accusations slide off them like water off submarine hulls. So, the Navy had activated a program so classified that fewer than 20 people in the entire military knew it existed. Black operations using deep cover flag officers who allowed themselves to be targeted by suspects, documented everything, and built cases that normal investigations couldn't touch. Ember closed the files and checked her watch. 12:30 hours. 30 minutes until the demonstration resumed, and her mission entered its most dangerous phase. She had spent 8 months establishing her cover identity, enduring harassment and intimidation, while gathering evidence about the theft ring. Today's events represented either the conclusion of her operation or its complete failure. Everything depended on the next few hours. The Joint Maritime Intelligence Center had been reconfigured by 1300 hours. Additional security personnel occupied strategic positions throughout the facility. Classified material that had been displayed during the morning session was now secured behind multiple access controls. The demonstration area itself had been expanded to accommodate visiting dignitaries whose presence elevated the security classification of the entire event. Ember entered the facility at 12:55, exactly 5 minutes before the scheduled briefing time. Her appearance remained unchanged from the morning. The same civilian clothes, the same striking blue hair, the same unremarkable credentials that identified her as a contractor's daughter. The only visible difference was a small bruise darkening near her mouth, evidence of her earlier encounter with Commander Savage. She took a position in the back corner, the same location she had occupied during the morning session.
I want this room
To
cleared.
any observer,
Now.
she seemed to be
Everyone
exactly
out.
what her documentation claimed. A young civilian with no particular expertise or authority, present only because of family connections to military contractors. Military personnel began arriving in groups. Their conversations focused on the advanced sonar technology they were about to witness. The demonstration promised to showcase capabilities that would revolutionize submarine
Look at you.
warfare,
Pathetic.
and everyone
You're a
understood they were
disgrace to that
participating in
uniform.
something
I don't care who
historically
you know, you follow
significant.
my rules or
Commander
you're done.
Savage entered with his
Is that
usual
clear?
confidence,
should
leading a
let
group
go
of
of my
SEAL
arm,
operators
Commander.
who looked refreshed and ready
You're
for
making a
professional
scene.
presentations. He spotted Ember immediately, and his expression shifted through
She really hit
surprise,
him hard.
irritation, and something that might have been
Yeah,
grudging
Ace is not
respect
gonna
for her
like this.
persistence. You again? He crossed the room with the same aggressive swagger that had characterized the morning confrontation. I thought security types didn't have clearance for classified technology
ordered to stand down,
demonstrations.
Commander. Explain your
Ember
actions.
stood at modified
priority
parade
was the
rest,
asset.
hands clasped
The
behind her
mission
back.
parameters changed
I
when
am
they
authorized
engaged.
to be here. Authorized by whom? Savage planted
you see
himself
the Admiral's
directly in
face?
front of her, close
I
enough
can't
that she
believe
would
this
have
is
needed to
happening.
step backward to maintain comfortable personal
Admirals, the current
space.
force deployment leaves
Show
the
me
flank
your
exposed.
orders.
If we
My
reroute the 7th
authorization
Fleet
is
through the HA
classified.
gap, we can secure the
Savage's
objective
face
by
began to
0600,
flush with the
Commander
same
Savage.
anger that had driven the morning's confrontation. Several other personnel watched the exchange with varying degrees of discomfort, but the hierarchical nature
We
of
need clear
military
documentation of the
organizations
bruising on the
created
forearm.
pressure against
Nurse, if you
intervention.
could place the
Junior
ruler next to the
personnel
ACE
rarely
bandage.
contradicted
Right away,
senior
Doctor. Hold still,
operators,
please.
even when
making
situations felt
contact?
wrong.
Not yet,
Classified,
Admiral.
Savage
He's approaching
repeated,
the target building
his
now.
voice carrying
We have
contempt
ACE
that could
on
be
him.
heard throughout the demonstration area. You know what I think? I think you're lying again. I think you snuck back in here after being thrown out this morning, and you're hoping nobody notices until it's too
We can
late to
insert
remove
here
you.
at 0400,
He looked around at
avoiding
the
the
others,
coastal radar
seeking
array.
support.
Confirmed.
Anyone else think
Secure
this is
the marina
ridiculous?
extraction point.
We're about to see submarine technology worth billions of dollars, and we're supposed to ignore some random girl who claims
status?
mysterious authorization she can't
We have
prove?
incoming.
A few uncertain nods emerged from the crowd. SEAL Team Leader Pierce, still uncomfortable with the entire situation, suggested waiting for official clarification.
Get down on the
Maybe
ground
the
now.
briefing officer will address
Hands behind your back.
authorization issues
You are
when the
under
presentation
arrest.
begins. No, Savage's voice went hard.
Operation
I'm
Ace
addressing
is
it right
officially a
now.
success.
This is
All
classified
objectives met.
submarine warfare
testament to
technology.
your team's
We're talking
precision,
about
Commander.
capabilities that could determine victory
Gentlemen,
or
this data
defeat in
confirms the
underwater
effectiveness of the
combat.
ACE
We don't
system.
just let
The
random
passive
people
sonar
observe
arrays
because they
detected the
feel like
contact
it.
at 20
He
miles,
reached
well
out and
outside
grabbed
the threat
Ember's arm
envelope.
again, fingers digging in above the elbow with enough pressure to cause visible indentation through her clothing. You're leaving, immediately. Ember didn't resist the physical contact or attempt to pull away. Her breathing remained steady while she met his gaze with the same emotionless calculation that had characterized her morning responses. I am authorized to attend this briefing, she said
is a
with mechanical
classified zone.
precision.
You are not
You are
authorized to be
interfering
here.
with a
Who gave you
lawful
these codes?
operation.
I accessed them myself,
Master Chief
Commander.
Hunter caught the phrasing
The anomaly
again
is
and frowned
escalating.
deeply. Twice
You are
now,
testing
this
my
supposed
patience,
civilian had
specialist.
used language
Stand
that
down.
sounded
I know what
distinctly
you did.
military when describing her situation.
I'm not moving.
What kind of contractor's daughter
You are
talked
out of
about
line, specialist.
lawful
That bruise
operations
proves your
when
liability.
being physically
Look at her.
grabbed by Navy
The Great Blue
commanders?
Hope is scared.
Savage
Your
leaned
opinion is
closer,
noted,
dropping his
Commander.
voice to
I told
something
you,
that
I am
might
ready
sound
for
reasonable
Ace.
to casual
That incident
observers
was an
while carrying
anomaly.
unmistakable
The review
threat
board
underneath.
disagrees. You're
Listen
grounded
very
until
carefully,
further
blue
notice.
hair. You walk out of here right now, and I forget this happened. You stay, and I make sure everyone knows you're the kind of person who doesn't respect security protocols or chain of command. Your choice. 4 counts in, 4 counts held, 4 counts out, 4 counts empty. The breathing pattern continued unchanged. "I am staying," Ember said quietly. And that was when Savage punched her.
I want this
Not
room
a slap
cleared.
this time.
Now.
Not a
Everyone
shove,
out.
but a closed fist driven with the full mechanical advantage of shoulders and hips straight into her jaw. The impact made a sound like a wooden mallet hitting a side of beef. Ember's head snapped backward, her body followed, and her knees unlocked as the force overwhelmed her base of support. She fell, hitting the concrete floor hard enough to knock air from her lungs.
Look at
The
you.
facility went
Pathetic.
silent
You're
except
a
for the
disgrace
hum of
to that
computer
uniform.
systems
I
that
don't care who
continued
you
their
know, you
endless
follow my rules or
calculations,
you're done.
oblivious to human
Is that clear?
drama. 7
You should let
Navy
go of my
personnel
arm,
stood
Commander.
frozen in various positions around
You're
the
making a
demonstration
scene.
area. Hunter had both hands half raised, as if he'd started to intervene but
She
couldn't
really hit
complete the
him hard.
motion. Lieutenant West's mouth hung open
Yeah,
in shock.
Ace is not gonna like
Two
this.
SEAL operators exchanged looks of pure disbelief. Savage stood over Ember, breathing hard as if he'd just completed a challenging physical exercise. His fists
You were
remained
ordered to stand
clenched,
down,
ready
Commander.
for additional
Explain your
violence
actions.
if circumstances
My priority
required
was
it.
the asset.
Anyone else want
The
to question
mission
my
parameters
authority?
changed when they
He
engaged.
asked the room. Nobody answered. Ember lay on the floor with one
Did you
hand
see
pressed
the
to her
Admiral's
jaw,
face?
blood seeping between
can't
her
believe this
fingers
is
where the
happening.
inside of her mouth had split against her teeth.
Admirals, the current
Her other
force
arm was
deployment
bent
leaves the
at an
flank
awkward
exposed.
angle beneath
If
her
we reroute
torso,
the 7th
and for
Fleet through the
5
HA
full
gap, we can
seconds,
secure the
she didn't
objective by
move.
0600,
Then she
Commander
inhaled
Savage.
carefully, the breath shuddering slightly but maintaining its established pattern. 4 counts. She rolled onto her side, then pushed herself
need
up to
clear
hands and
documentation
knees,
of the
with
bruising on the
movements that
forearm.
suggested significant
Nurse, if you could
pain
place
but
the ruler
unbroken
next to the ACE
determination.
bandage.
Blood
Right away,
dripped
Doctor.
from her
Hold still,
mouth
please.
onto the polished
Is he making
concrete,
contact?
creating small
Not
dark
yet, Admiral.
spots in a rough
He's
line.
approaching the target
She got
building
one
now.
foot underneath
We
her,
have ACE
then the
on.
other, rising in stages like someone learning to stand after a serious injury. When she reached full height, swaying slightly but upright, she touched her jaw gingerly and tested the range of motion.
can insert
Nothing
here at
appeared broken,
0400,
though the
avoiding
bone
the
would
coastal
certainly
radar
bruise
array.
deep purple within
Confirmed.
hours.
Secure the
She
marina
wiped blood from
extraction
her
point.
lip with the back of her hand, examined it briefly, then
I'm
lowered
here.
the hand back to her side. She didn't speak.
What's
She
the
didn't
status?
cry. She didn't even look at
We have
Savage
incoming.
directly. Instead, she focused on something in the middle distance that nobody else could see, her breathing continuing in the same controlled pattern that suggested advanced training in stress
Get down on the
management.
ground now.
Get up, one of the
Hands
SEAL
behind your
operators
back.
finally found his
You
voice.
are under arrest.
Knox, you just assaulted someone in a classified facility.
Operation Ace is
This is
officially
way
a success.
beyond
All
acceptable
objectives met.
behavior. I dealt with a
testament
security
to your team's
breach,
precision,
Savage
Commander.
snapped. Someone should have stopped her at
Gentlemen,
the
this data
entrance.
confirms
She
the
has no
effectiveness
business
of the
being
ACE
here,
system.
and everyone
The
knows
passive
it.
sonar arrays detected
Hunter
the
stared at
contact
Ember
at 20
with an
miles,
expression
well
that
outside the
mixed
threat
horror
envelope.
with growing recognition. The way she'd fallen, the way she'd stood back up, the way she was standing now with weight balanced and hands loose despite
We have
blood
the
running down
facility
her
in
chin.
sight.
That wasn't
Preparing
typical
for final
civilian
approach.
behavior. That stance, that breathing, that absolute refusal to show fear or pain, he'd seen it before in operators, in people who had spent time in
This is a
places where
classified
showing
zone.
weakness
You are not
meant
authorized
death.
to be here.
Knox,
Who gave you these
he said
codes?
carefully.
I accessed them
I think
myself,
we
Commander.
should... The door
The
to the
anomaly is
demonstration area
escalating.
opened before he
You
could
are
finish the
testing my
sentence.
patience,
Every head in the
specialist.
room
Stand
turned
down.
toward the sound,
know what you did.
expecting to see briefing officers or security
moving.
personnel responding to the
You
disturbance.
are out of line, specialist.
Instead,
That
6
bruise
men
proves
entered
your
in a
liability.
formation that left
Look
no
at her.
confusion
The Great
about
Blue
their
Hope is
authority.
scared.
Your
They wore
opinion is
service
noted,
dress
Commander.
blues with
I
ribbons
told you,
stacked
I
in
am ready
colorful
for
rows
ACE.
above breast
That
pockets.
incident was an anomaly.
Shoulder boards
The review
gleaming
board
with stars that
disagrees.
indicated
You're
the highest
grounded until
levels of
further
military
notice.
command. The first through the door carried 4 stars. The second wore 3. The third, fourth, and fifth each displayed 2 stars. The sixth wore 3 stars, but carried himself with the bearing of someone accustomed to absolute authority. Behind them, 4 personnel in military police uniforms entered with sidearms holstered, but clearly ready for rapid deployment if circumstances required armed
I want this
intervention.
room cleared. Now.
The demonstration
Everyone
area's
out.
atmosphere changed instantly. Savage's face transitioned through several colors in quick succession, red to white to something approaching gray. The other military personnel snapped to attention so quickly that equipment rattled against uniform buckles. Even Ember, still swaying slightly with blood on her chin, brought her hands to her sides and squared her
Look at you.
shoulders in a
Pathetic.
position that looked
You're a disgrace
suspiciously
to that
like
uniform.
military
I
bearing
don't
for
care who
someone
you know, you
supposedly
follow my rules
civilian.
or you're done.
Fleet Admiral Stone
Is that
Bennett,
clear?
commander of Pacific
should
Fleet
let go of my
submarine
arm,
operations,
Commander.
stepped forward first.
You're making
He
a
was
scene.
61 years old with 38 years of service, carrying a reputation for absolute
She really hit
precision
him
in
hard.
both operations and justice. His
Yeah,
gaze
Ace
swept
is
the
not gonna like
demonstration
this.
area, taking in blood drops on the floor, frozen military personnel, and Ember standing against the wall with obvious facial trauma. Then he looked directly at Savage, and the temperature dropped 20 degrees.
Explain your actions.
Commander Savage,
priority was
Bennett's
the
voice
asset.
could have cut through
The mission
submarine
parameters
holes.
changed
Stand
when
at
they
attention. Savage snapped upright, though his hands shook noticeably.
Did you see the Admiral's
Sir,
face?
I can explain.
believe this is
You will
happening.
not speak unless directly questioned. Do you
Admirals, the current
understand?
force deployment leaves
Yes,
the flank
sir.
exposed.
Admiral
If we
Cross moved
reroute
to
the
Bennett's
7th Fleet
right,
through the HA
his
gap,
2
we can
stars
secure the
representing
objective by
command of
0600,
Atlantic
Commander
Fleet surface
Savage.
warfare operations. His eyes found Ember, and something passed across his expression. Not surprise, but grim confirmation of something
We
he'd
need
already
clear
known.
documentation of the
Admiral
bruising on
Hayes
the
took the
forearm.
left position,
Nurse, if you
also
could
wearing
place the
2
ruler
stars
next to
as
the
head of
ACE
strategic
bandage.
intelligence
Right away,
for
Doctor. Hold
combined
still,
fleet
please.
operations.
Is he making
The
contact?
3 rear admirals
Not yet,
from Naval
Admiral.
Special Warfare
approaching the
Command
target building
fanned
now.
out slightly,
We have ACE
creating a
on it.
wall of authority that filled the room like a physical presence. One of them, Admiral Blake, had worked with SEAL teams for 20 years. He knew Savage personally, knew his record and
can
his
insert here at
capabilities.
0400,
Judging by the
avoiding the
expression on his
coastal radar
face,
array.
he also knew that
Confirmed.
record had just
Secure the
become
marina extraction
completely
point.
irrelevant. The clues are everywhere, aren't they?
I'm here.
Drop a comment. Who do you think Ember really
What's
is?
the status?
And hit subscribe because
We
we're
have
about to
incoming.
find out if your theory is right. Trust me, the real answer is wilder than anything you were thinking. Fleet Admiral Bennett took 3 measured steps forward, his shoes creating precise sounds against
Hands
the
behind your
concrete
back.
floor.
You
He
are
stopped
under
exactly
arrest.
6 feet from Savage and clasped his hands behind his back,
Operation Ace is
assuming a
officially a
position that
success.
every
All
person in the
objectives
room
met.
recognized as the prelude to
testament to your team's
career-ending
precision,
conversations. Commander Savage,
Gentlemen,
Bennett
this data
said with the
confirms
kind
the
of calm
effectiveness
that
of the
preceded
ACE
volcanic
system.
eruptions,
The passive sonar arrays
approximately
detected the contact at
45
20 miles,
minutes ago,
well outside the
you
threat
struck
envelope.
another service member in this facility. Is that correct? Savage's throat worked visibly as he struggled to find words that might salvage his situation.
We have
Sir,
the facility
she
in
was...
sight.
There was a
Preparing
security
for
issue.
final approach.
I thought... Answer the question. Did you strike her? Yes, sir. With a closed fist? Sweat beaded on Savage's forehead as the implications of his
This is a
actions
classified
became
zone.
clear.
You are not authorized
Sir,
to be here. Who
if I
gave
could
you
just
these codes?
explain the
I accessed them
circumstances.
myself, Commander.
Answer the
The
question.
anomaly is
Closed fist?
escalating.
You
Yes,
are
sir.
testing my patience,
Bennett
specialist.
nodded slowly,
Stand down.
then turned his
I know
head
what you
slightly
did.
toward Admiral Cross without breaking eye contact with
moving.
Savage. Admiral Cross,
out of
can you
line,
confirm the
specialist.
identity
That
of the
bruise
individual
proves you're a
Commander
liability.
Savage assaulted?
Look at her.
Cross
The Great
pulled a
Blue Hope
tablet
is
from his
scared.
briefcase,
Your opinion is
tapped
noted,
it twice
Commander.
with movements
I
that
told you,
carried the
I am
weight of
ready for
absolute
ACE.
certainty.
That incident was
Then
an
read from the
anomaly.
screen.
The review
His
board
voice
disagrees.
carried through the
You're
demonstration
grounded until
area with
further notice.
perfect clarity, each word falling like artillery shells. Rear Admiral Ember Sterling, service number classified, current assignment, Operation Deep Watch, Joint Intelligence Division, rank 07, Rear Admiral, upper half. Authorized clearances, top secret, special intelligence, special access programs 1 through 9, critical and special. The words
I want
landed
this
like
room
nuclear
cleared.
warheads
Now.
detonating in
Everyone
sequence. Hunter's knees actually buckled, and he caught himself against a nearby console, staring at Ember with eyes wide enough to show white completely around the irises. One of the younger SEAL operators made a sound like all the air had been punched out of his lungs in a single blow. Lieutenant West whispered something that might have been a prayer or a curse or both, her hand flying to her
Look
mouth
at
in
you.
shock.
Pathetic.
Another
You're a
operator
disgrace to
dropped
that
the tablet
uniform.
he'd been
I don't
holding,
care who
and the
you know,
device
you follow
clattered
my
onto the
rules or you're
floor with a
done.
sound that seemed
that clear?
unnaturally loud in the sudden
should let
silence.
go of my arm, Commander.
Savage's face cycled through emotions
You're
too
making a
rapidly to
scene.
track. Confusion, disbelief, recognition, horror.
She
His
really
mouth
hit him
opened and
hard.
closed several times without producing any sound,
Yeah, Ace
like a
is not
fish
gonna
pulled
like this.
suddenly from water and struggling to breathe air. Ember remained standing against the wall, blood still seeping from the split in her lip. But her posture had shifted fractionally.
You were
Her
ordered to
spine
stand
somehow
down, Commander.
seemed straighter,
Explain your
her
actions.
chin lifted
My
half an
priority
inch
was the
higher.
asset.
Not
The
arrogance,
mission parameters
simply
changed
fact.
when they engaged.
She no longer needed to hide in plain sight.
Did you
Rear
see the
Admiral,
Admiral's face?
Savage's voice
I can't
cracked like
believe
an
this is
adolescent's.
happening.
That's... She's
Admirals,
28
the current
years
force
old.
deployment leaves
That's
the flank
impossible.
exposed.
You
If we
can't make
reroute the 7th
07
Fleet
at
through the
28.
HA gap, we
The
can secure the
promotion board
objective by
requirements,
0600,
the
Commander
time and
Savage.
service standards, the... You will address her by her rank, Admiral Blake cut in, his voice like gravel being fed through a wood chipper. That is
We
Rear
need clear
Admiral Sterling,
documentation of the
and you will
bruising on
not
the
speak to
forearm.
her, about
Nurse, if you
her,
could place the
or
ruler
in her
next to the
presence
ACE
without
bandage.
explicit
Right away,
permission
Doctor.
from
Hold
senior
still, please.
authority.
Is he
Am I
making
clear?
contact?
Not
Sir,
yet,
there
Admiral.
must be some kind
He's
of
approaching
mistake.
the target building now.
I read personnel
We have ACE on
files.
him.
I know promotion timelines. Bennett raised one hand in a gesture that silenced Savage as effectively as a physical gag. There is no mistake, Commander. Rear
can
Admiral
insert here at
Sterling was promoted to
0400, avoiding the coastal
078
radar
months
array.
ago under special
Confirmed.
authority
Secure the
granted
marina
by the Chief
extraction
of
point.
Naval Operations and confirmed by the Secretary of the Navy.
I'm here.
Her promotion was classified due to the nature of her
status?
assignment with Operation
We have
Deep Watch.
incoming.
He let that information settle for 3 full seconds before continuing. That classification does not make her rank any less real or her authority any less binding than if she wore the stars openly on her uniform. The demonstration area had become completely silent except for the hum of computer systems and the barely audible sound of Savage's increasingly rapid breathing. Everyone present understood they were witnessing something that would change careers, end futures, and reshape their understanding of military hierarchy. Specialized military insurance covers high-risk classified operations with combat deployment clauses and family protection benefits. You asked her rank yesterday, Commander, Bennett continued with relentless precision. You asked again today. She attempted to de-escalate both situations through appropriate military courtesy. You responded with physical intimidation, verbal harassment, and ultimately assault on a flag officer. He gestured toward the blood drops on the floor. In this facility, in front of witnesses, with security cameras capturing every moment, you committed assault on a superior commissioned officer while she was conducting classified operations vital to national security. Savage swayed like someone had hit him with a bat. The magnitude of his situation was becoming clear, and the implications extended far beyond simple disciplinary action. Assault on a flag officer carried potential court-martial charges, prison sentences, and the complete destruction of everything he had built during his military career. I didn't know, he said desperately. Nobody told me. How was I supposed to know? She looks like a college student. She has blue hair. She's wearing civilian clothes. How could anyone know she's an admiral? You were supposed to show basic military courtesy to another service member, regardless of their apparent rank, Admiral Cross said coldly. You were supposed to follow established protocols for challenging someone's presence in a classified space, instead of resorting to intimidation and violence. He stepped forward, tablet still in hand. You were supposed to conduct yourself according to the standards expected of a Navy officer, not like a street thug who uses physical force to resolve disputes. The military police shifted positions slightly, a subtle movement that placed them at better angles for rapid intervention. If Savage's desperation led to additional poor decisions, their presence served as a reminder that this situation had moved far beyond administrative discipline into the realm of criminal prosecution. Ember wiped her mouth again, streaking blood across the back of her hand. When she spoke, her voice emerged quiet, but clear enough to carry throughout the demonstration area. Permission to address the admirals, sir? Bennett nodded formally. Granted, Admiral Sterling. She straightened further, coming to full attention despite the swelling spreading across her jaw, and the blood still visible at the corner of her mouth. The physical assault is documented and will be addressed through appropriate channels. However, it is secondary to the primary mission objective. Her words carried the same professional precision that had characterized all her responses, but now they held additional weight. This wasn't a civilian making complaints about military personnel. This was a flag officer providing operational assessment to superior authority. Commander Savage is scheduled to receive tasking for classified submarine operations beginning at 1400 hours. Those operations require him to access advanced sonar technology specifications that represent targets of ongoing intelligence theft. I recommend we proceed with scheduled activities while maintaining surveillance protocols. The statement fell into the room like a stone dropped into still water. Savage's eyes went wide as understanding began to penetrate his shock. Advanced sonar technology? What are you talking about? I don't have anything to do with it. I'm not involved in any... You will not speak, Admiral Blake said, with finality that brooked no argument. Cross looked at Ember with something that might have been respect mixed with concern. Admiral Sterling, you understand that proceeding with the operation places you at additional risk. Commander Savage now knows your identity, which fundamentally alters mission parameters. Understood, sir, Ember replied without hesitation. However, the case requires documentation of active compromise, not merely preparatory actions. If we terminate now, the theft network remains intact. If we allow scheduled operations to continue, we can identify and neutralize all participants simultaneously. Bennett studied her face carefully, noting the blood, the bruising, the absolute absence of anything resembling fear or doubt. That is your professional assessment? Yes, sir. And you are willing to continue the operation despite the assault and the
This is
compromised
a
cover.
classified zone. You are not
4
authorized
counts
to be
in,
here.
4
Who gave you
counts
these
held,
codes?
4
accessed
counts
them myself,
out,
Commander.
4 counts empty.
The anomaly is
The breathing
escalating.
pattern continued
You are
beneath the
testing my
surface,
patience,
visible now
specialist.
to trained
Stand
eyes
down.
that knew what
I
to
know
look
what you
for.
did.
I am here to complete the mission, sir.
not moving.
Personal considerations
You
are
are out of
secondary
line,
to
specialist.
operational
That bruise
success.
proves your
For a
liability.
long moment,
Look at her.
nobody moved.
The Great Blue Hope
The
is
6
scared.
admirals
Your
exchanged
opinion
looks
is
that
noted,
carried
Commander.
entire
I told you,
conversations
I am
worth
ready
of
for
meaning,
Ace. That
weighing
incident was an
operational
anomaly.
necessity
The
against
review board
personnel
disagrees.
safety,
You're
mission
grounded until
success
further notice.
against personal cost. Hunter stared at the floor as if hoping it would open up and swallow him completely. The other military personnel stood frozen, trying to process the fact that the young woman they'd watched being assaulted was not only a flag officer, but was actively running a classified investigation that apparently involved their commander. Finally, Bennett nodded with the kind of decision that shaped military history. Very well.
I want this room
We
cleared.
proceed as
Now.
planned.
Everyone
He
out.
turned back to Savage with an expression that could have melted steel. Commander, you will attend the scheduled technology demonstration. You will execute assigned tasks exactly as outlined in your operational parameters. You will not deviate from mission requirements. You will not contact anyone outside of approved communication channels, and you will absolutely not approach, speak to,
Look at
or
you.
interact
Pathetic.
with Rear
You're
Admiral
a
Sterling
disgrace to
in
that
any
uniform.
capacity.
I don't care who
His
you
voice
know, you
dropped to
follow my
something
rules
that
or you're
carried the
done.
weight of absolute
Is that
authority.
clear?
4 military
let go of
police
my arm,
personnel will
Commander.
maintain continuous surveillance
You're
on
making
your
a scene.
activities. Any violation of these instructions will result in immediate arrest and detention,
She
pending
really hit him
court-martial.
hard.
Is this clear? Savage looked like he was
Yeah,
watching
Ace
his
is not gonna
entire
like
world
this.
collapse in real time. Everything he'd built, every assumption he'd made, every comfortable certainty about his place in the military hierarchy had been destroyed in the space
You
of
were ordered
10
to stand
minutes.
down, Commander. Explain your actions.
Sir, this is...
My priority
I don't
was the
understand
asset.
what's happening.
The
I'm a
mission
Navy
parameters
SEAL.
changed
I've
when they
served
engaged.
honorably for 15 years. I have commendations, fitness
see the
reports,
Admiral's
a
face?
clean record.
I
How
can't
can
believe
this
is
be?
happening.
You don't need to understand. Bennett
Admirals,
cut
the
him
current
off.
force deployment
You need
leaves
to
the
follow
flank
orders.
exposed.
Can
If
you do
we
that,
reroute
Commander?
the 7th Fleet through the HA gap, we can secure
Yes,
the
sir.
objective by 0600,
Good.
Commander Savage.
Bennett gestured to the military police. Escort him to briefing room 7. Maintain visual contact at all times. Begin surveillance protocols
We need
immediately.
clear documentation
The
of the
military
bruising on the
police moved in,
forearm.
taking
Nurse, if you
positions
could place
around
the ruler
Savage
next
with
to the
professional
ACE bandage.
efficiency.
Right away, Doctor.
They
Hold
weren't
still,
there
please.
to arrest him yet,
Is he making
but their
contact?
formation made it clear
yet,
that his
Admiral.
freedom of movement had
approaching the
been
target building
severely
now.
restricted.
We have ACE
Any
on him.
attempt to flee or deviate from approved activities would result in immediate detention. As they guided him toward the exit, Savage twisted back to look at Ember one final time.
We can
His
insert
expression
here at
showed a
0400,
complex mixture of
avoiding the coastal radar
emotions,
array.
but the dominant one
Confirmed.
was something
Secure the
approaching
marina
betrayal.
extraction point.
"We served together," he said, his voice carrying a desperation that echoed through the demonstration area.
What's the status?
Operation Neptune's Pride,
We have incoming.
18 months ago. Remember the submarine intercept off the Strait of Hormuz? 12 hours in hostile waters, and I stayed with you when the extraction got compromised. I pulled you out of that situation when anyone else would have left you behind.
You are under
His
arrest.
voice rose slightly as the implications of his situation became more
Operation
real.
Ace is
How can
officially
you
a
do this
success.
to me?
All
I saved your
objectives met.
life. We were teammates.
testament to your
How
team's
can you
precision,
stand there and
Commander.
watch them destroy everything I've worked
Hellman,
for?
this data confirms
Ember
the
met his eyes
effectiveness of the
directly for the
ACE
first
system.
time since the
passive
admirals had
sonar arrays
entered the room.
detected the contact
When she
at 20
spoke,
miles,
her
well
tone
outside the
carried
threat
no
envelope.
anger, no satisfaction, no emotion at all. The words emerged with the same mechanical precision that had characterized all her responses. "You asked
have the
my rank,
facility in
Commander.
sight.
Now you have your
Preparing
answer."
for final
The
approach.
military police guided him out of the demonstration area before he could respond. The door closed behind them with a sound like a vault ceiling, leaving the admirals and remaining personnel in
classified
silence
zone.
that
You
felt
are not
heavy
authorized
with
to be here.
unresolved
Who
tension.
gave you these codes?
Bennett
I
turned to the
accessed them
SEAL
myself,
operators who
Commander.
had witnessed the
The
entire
anomaly is
confrontation.
escalating.
His expression had
testing my
softened slightly
patience,
from
specialist.
command authority
Stand
to
down.
something more
know what you
human,
did.
but the underlying steel remained
I'm
visible.
not moving.
Gentlemen, you
You
are
are out of
confined to
line,
quarters
specialist.
pending
That
debriefing.
bruise proves
You
your
will not
liability.
discuss what you
Look at
witnessed
her.
here with
The Great
anyone
Blue Hope is
outside of
scared.
official
Your opinion is
investigation
noted,
channels.
Commander.
I
You will
told you,
not
I am ready
contact
for
Commander
Ace.
Savage
That
or
incident
attempt
was
to
an
influence
anomaly.
ongoing
The review board
operations.
disagrees.
You
You're
will make
grounded until
yourselves
further
available
notice.
for formal statements when called upon. He focused on Hunter specifically. Master Chief, you will coordinate with the investigation team. Your observations about today's events may be crucial for understanding the complete scope of this situation. Hunter nodded, though his expression remained troubled. "Aye, aye, sir. Request permission to speak freely?" "Granted. That girl, Admiral Sterling, She took a serious beating
I want
without
this
fighting
room cleared.
back.
Now.
That suggests
Everyone
either
out.
exceptional discipline or acceptance of mission parameters that most officers would find unacceptable. Either way, it indicates something significant about her training and commitment. Bennett's expression showed approval for the Master Chief's professional assessment. Your observation is noted and appreciated, Master Chief. Admiral Sterling's dedication to mission success has been
Look at you.
exemplary throughout
Pathetic.
this operation.
You're a disgrace to
The
that
remaining SEAL
uniform. I
personnel
don't care
filed
who
out
you
of the
know, you
demonstration
follow my
area,
rules or you're
moving
done.
with the subdued efficiency of
clear?
people whose assumptions
You should
about
let go of my
reality
arm,
have been
Commander.
fundamentally challenged.
You're making a
Conversations would
scene.
undoubtedly continue in private spaces, but the official silence would hold. When
She
the room
really hit him
contained
hard.
only the 6 admirals and Ember, the atmosphere
Yeah,
shifted
Ace is
again.
not gonna like this.
The formal command structure remained in place, but the immediate crisis had passed, allowing space for more complex considerations. Bennett's rigid posture relaxed fractionally as
You
he
were
studied
ordered to
Ember's
stand down,
injuries.
Commander. Explain your
Admiral
actions.
Sterling, you are
My
ordered to
priority was
report to
the
medical
asset.
for
The
evaluation
mission
and
parameters
documentation
changed when
of
they
your
engaged.
injuries. That is not a suggestion. Sir,
Did you
medical
see the
attention is
Admiral's
not
face?
necessary. I can
can't
continue
believe this
with...
is happening.
That was not a request, Admiral. It was
Admirals,
a direct
the current
order from
force
your
deployment leaves
superior
the flank
officer.
exposed.
Report
If
to
we reroute
medical
the 7th Fleet
immediately.
through the HA gap,
Ember
we can
came to
secure the
attention
objective by
despite the obvious
0600,
pain the
Commander
movement
Savage.
caused. Aye, aye, sir. After medical evaluation, you will brief us completely on contingency protocols for the next phase of Operation
We need
Deep
clear
Watch.
documentation
The
of the
situation has
bruising on the
changed
forearm.
significantly,
Nurse,
and we
if you
need to
could place the
understand
ruler
all
next to the
available
ACE
options for
bandage.
Right away,
proceeding
Doctor. Hold
safely.
still, please.
Cross stepped
Is he making
forward with his
contact?
tablet still in hand.
Not yet, Admiral.
Admiral Sterling,
He's approaching
before
the
you
target
leave,
building now.
I need
We
confirmation
have
about the
ACE on
scope
him.
of this investigation. How many personnel are potentially involved in the technology theft? Current estimates suggest between 12 and 18 individuals across multiple commands,
We
sir.
can insert here
The
at
network
0400,
includes procurement
avoiding the coastal
officers,
radar array.
technical specialists,
Secure
and at
the
least
marina
3
extraction
flag
point.
officers whose positions provide access to submarine warfare development programs. The number
What's the
hit the
status?
assembled admirals like a physical blow.
We have incoming.
Blake actually stepped backward, his face paling as he processed the implications. 3 flag officers? That's not just theft, that's systematic compromise of our most
down on the
advanced
ground now.
naval capabilities.
Hands behind your back.
Yes, sir, Ember
You are under
confirmed.
arrest.
The estimated value of compromised technology exceeds
Operation Ace is officially a
$4.7 billion,
success. All
with
objectives
strategic implications that
A
could affect
testament to your
submarine
team's
operations
precision,
for the
Commander.
next decade. Admiral
Gentlemen,
Hayes,
this data
who had been
confirms the
silent throughout the
effectiveness of the ACE
confrontation,
system.
finally
The
spoke.
passive sonar
What's the
arrays detected
timeline
the
for
contact
completing
at
this
20 miles,
operation?
well outside the
18
threat
to
envelope.
24 hours, sir. Commander Savage's scheduled activities will trigger responses from his contacts that should allow us to identify and arrest the entire network simultaneously. Bennett nodded slowly, weighing operational necessities against personnel concerns. Very well. Proceed with medical evaluation. Then return for complete briefing at 1600 hours.
This is a classified
We'll finalize
zone. You are not
protocols for the
authorized to be here.
operation's
Who gave you
conclusion.
these codes?
Ember
I accessed
saluted
them
crisply,
myself, Commander.
despite her injuries,
The
and
anomaly is
turned toward the
escalating.
exit. As she
You are
reached the
testing my
door,
patience,
Bennett called out
specialist.
one final
Stand
time.
down.
Admiral
what you
Sterling.
did.
She stopped and turned back
I'm not
toward
moving.
him, maintaining formal bearing
out of
despite
line,
everything that had
specialist.
occurred.
That bruise
For the
proves your
record,
reliability.
Bennett said
Look at her.
quietly,
The great
your
blue folk
conduct
is
throughout
scared.
this
Your opinion
operation
is
has
noted,
been
Commander.
exemplary.
I told you,
What
I
you've
am ready
endured for the
for
sake
Ace.
of mission
That
success
incident was an
represents the
anomaly.
highest
The review
standards of
board
naval
disagrees.
service.
You're
Your
grounded until
sacrifice
further
is
notice.
noted and appreciated. Ember's expression didn't change, but something in her posture suggested the acknowledgement meant more than she would ever say aloud. Thank you, sir. I'm just doing my job. She exited the demonstration area, leaving 6 admirals to contemplate the complexity of operations that required flag officers to sacrifice their dignity for national security. The blood drops on the floor remained as evidence of costs that would never
I want this
appear in
room
official
cleared.
reports.
Now.
Sacrifices
out.
that stayed classified long after missions concluded. You can feel it building, can't you? Something massive is about to drop. If you want to see the moment everything explodes and Ember's true identity destroys everyone's assumptions, make sure you're subscribed. This revelation changes everything. The next hours would determine whether Operation Deep Watch succeeded in protecting
Look at you.
billions of dollars
Pathetic.
worth of
You're a
submarine
disgrace to that
technology,
uniform.
or whether
I
the
don't care
personal
who you
cost
know,
of the
you follow
mission
my rules
had
or
made
you're
ultimate
done.
success impossible.
clear?
But for now,
You should let
in
go
the
of my
quiet
arm,
aftermath
Commander.
of confrontation, the machinery
You're
of
making a
justice
scene.
began its slow, methodical work of transforming individual sacrifice into
She really hit him
institutional
hard.
protection. The medical facility at the Joint
Yeah,
Maritime
Ace is not gonna
Intelligence
like
Center
this.
operated with the clinical efficiency expected of a military installation that processed classified personnel from the highest levels of government. Sarah Chen, the facility's chief medical officer, had 22 years of experience treating injuries that ranged from training accidents to combat wounds that could never be officially documented. But when Rear Admiral Ember Sterling walked through her door at 14:30 hours with facial bruising and blood at the corner of her mouth, Dr. Chen's professional composure developed visible cracks. "Admiral," she said, rising so quickly from her desk that her chair rolled backward into a cabinet with a soft thud. "What happened to you?" Ember settled onto the examination table without being asked, her movements precise despite obvious discomfort. Workplace disagreement. Fleet Admiral Bennett ordered this evaluation for documentation purposes, then immediate return to duty status, Doctor. Chen pulled on latex gloves with practiced efficiency while studying the extent of visible injuries. Bruising had progressed significantly since the morning incident, spreading across Ember's jawbone in patterns consistent with blunt force trauma from a closed fist.
Secure the marina
Swelling distorted the normal contours of her face, and when Dr. Chen gently palpated the area to check for fractures, Ember's breathing pattern never changed.
We have incoming.
"Can you open your mouth for me, Admiral?" Ember complied without hesitation. The inside of her lower lip showed a laceration approximately 2 centimeters long, where tissue had been caught between knuckles and teeth during the impact. The wound had stopped bleeding actively, but the edges remained red and swollen. "Range of motion appears normal, Dr. Ru," Chen observed, stepping back with a frown. "No fracture that I can detect without imaging. But, Admiral, with all respect, this injury pattern is consistent with deliberate assault. I need to document that finding in my official report. Document accurately. That is your professional responsibility. I also need to ask whether you wish to file formal charges against whoever did this to you." Ember's expression remained unchanged. "The matter is being handled through appropriate command channels. Your medical findings are appreciated, but legal proceedings fall outside your jurisdiction." Dr. Chen hesitated, recognizing the tone of someone who had made decisions at levels far above her security clearance. She retrieved a digital camera and took 6 photographs from different angles, each image capturing the full extent of damage in clinical detail that would satisfy any court-martial proceeding. After applying antibiotic ointment to the lip laceration and checking pupil responses for signs of concussion, Dr. Chen completed her examination with tests of balance and coordination. Everything except the visible trauma came back within normal parameters. "Admiral, I strongly recommend at least 12 hours of light duty. The swelling will worsen before it improves, and there's risk of complications if you engage in strenuous activity. Recommendation noted. Please complete your report. I will be returning to full operational status immediately." Chen knew when she was fighting a battle that couldn't be won. She completed the documentation in silence, uploaded it to the secure medical database, and handed Ember a cold pack wrapped in sterile gauze. "At least use this for the next 15 minutes. It will help reduce inflammation." Ember accepted the pack and held it against her jaw for exactly 10 seconds before setting it aside. "Thank you, Doctor. Your professionalism is appreciated." She left the medical facility before Dr. Chen could offer additional protests, walking across the base with the same measured pace that had characterized all her movements since the morning's confrontation. Personnel moving between buildings paid her no particular attention, seeing only another officer conducting routine business between classified assignments. But underneath that unremarkable exterior, Operation Deep Watch was entering its most crucial phase. At 1500 hours, Commander Knox Savage sat in Briefing Room 7, surrounded by technology that represented the cutting edge of submarine warfare capabilities. Advanced sonar displays showed real-time acoustic signatures from submarines operating across the Pacific Fleet. Computer workstations provided access to targeting algorithms, detection protocols, and acoustic analysis programs worth billions of dollars in research and development. Military police personnel maintained discreet positions near the exits, their presence barely noticeable but strategically positioned to prevent any attempt at unauthorized departure. Savage appeared to be attending a routine technology demonstration, but every movement was being monitored and recorded by systems he couldn't see. The briefing officer, a submarine warfare specialist with access to the Navy's most advanced detection capabilities, began his presentation with classified material that only a handful of people were authorized to witness. Gentlemen, what you're about to see represents a quantum leap in our ability to detect and track hostile submarines.
We can insert
The new
here at
acoustic
0400,
signature analysis
avoiding the
system
coastal
can
radar
identify
array.
specific
Confirmed.
vessel types
Secure
at
the
ranges
marina extraction
exceeding
point.
previous capabilities by factor of 3. Technical
I'm here.
displays illuminated around the room, showing sonar patterns that
status?
look like abstract art to untrained
have
eyes
incoming.
but contain tactical information that could determine victory or defeat in underwater combat. Savage leaned forward, apparently fascinated by capabilities that would revolutionize submarine operations.
Hands behind your
Commander
back.
Savage, the
You
briefing
are under
officer
arrest.
continued, your experience with underwater infiltration makes your
Operation Ace
input
is officially a
particularly
success.
valuable.
All objectives
These
met.
detection capabilities will
testament
directly
to your
affect
team's
SEAL
precision,
delivery
Commander.
systems and extraction protocols.
this data confirms
Savage
the
nodded,
effectiveness of the
asking
ACE
technical
system.
questions that
The passive
demonstrated
sonar
genuine
arrays detected the
professional
contact
interest.
at 20 miles,
To any
well outside
observer,
the threat
he
envelope.
appeared to be exactly what his record claimed, an experienced special operations officer seeking to understand technology that would affect his future missions. What the observers couldn't see was the microscopic camera concealed in his uniform button, or the data storage device hidden in the sole of his boot, or the encrypted communication system that would transmit stolen information
This
to
is a
contacts whose
classified zone.
identities
You are not
remained
authorized to
hidden
be here.
behind
Who gave
layers
you
of
these
digital
codes?
I
obfuscation.
accessed them myself, Commander.
Advanced military
The
legal
anomaly is
education
escalating.
courses cover security
You are
clearance
testing my
law
patience,
and federal
specialist.
prosecution
Stand down.
procedures
I know
for
what you
military
did.
careers, sirs. In a
I'm not
secure
moving.
facility 3 miles away,
You are out of line,
Ember
specialist.
Sterling sat
That
before a
bruise
bank of
proves your
monitors that
liability.
displayed
Look at
every
her.
angle of
The Great Blue
Savage's
Hope is
activities.
scared.
Your opinion
Advanced
is
surveillance
noted,
equipment
Commander.
captured
I
not
told you,
only his
I am
visible
ready for
actions,
ACE.
but also
That incident was an
electromagnetic
anomaly.
emissions,
The review board
encrypted
disagrees.
transmissions,
You're
and
grounded
data
until further
transfers that
notice.
normal security systems would miss completely. Target is accessing File Directory 7, reported intelligence analyst Ridge Sullivan from his position at the monitoring station. Duration, 4 minutes, 18 seconds. He's photographing technical specifications for the new sonar array configuration. Admiral Cross, who had remained at the facility to oversee the operation's conclusion, studied the surveillance feeds with
I
grim
want this room
satisfaction.
cleared. Now.
So he's
Everyone
taking
out.
it. After everything that's happened, he's still proceeding with the theft. The network believes they have operational security, Ember replied, her voice clinical despite the swelling that made speaking uncomfortable. The Savage's arrest this morning would have triggered emergency protocols throughout their organization. They're probably assuming this is their last opportunity to acquire the technology
Look at
before
you.
security
Pathetic.
measures make
You're a
future
disgrace to
access
that
impossible.
uniform. I don't care
Fleet
who you
Admiral
know, you
Bennett
follow
joined
my
them
rules
from
or
an
you're
adjacent
done.
communication
Is that
center,
clear?
where he'd been
should let
coordinating
go
with
of my
law
arm,
enforcement
Commander.
agencies across 3 time zones.
You're making a scene.
Coast Guard Investigative Service confirms they have surveillance on the designated transfer
She
point.
really hit him hard.
FBI Cybercrimes Division is monitoring
Yeah,
the
Ace is
encrypted
not gonna like
communication
this.
channels. We have assets positioned to intercept the entire network simultaneously. The operation had grown far beyond a simple investigation into technology theft.
You were ordered to
What had
stand
started
down,
as
Commander.
suspicious
Explain your
financial
actions.
My
transactions had
priority was
revealed
the
a
asset.
conspiracy that
The mission
extended through
parameters
multiple
changed when
military
they engaged.
commands, civilian contractor networks, and foreign
Did you see
intelligence
the Admiral's
services.
face?
The estimated
I can't
value of
believe this is
compromised
happening.
information approached $5 billion,
Admirals, the current
with
force
strategic
deployment leaves the flank
implications that
exposed.
could
If
affect
we reroute
American
the 7th
submarine
Fleet through the HA
superiority
gap,
for
we can secure the
decades.
objective by
How many
0600,
arrest teams
Commander
are
Savage.
standing by? Cross asked. 18 locations across 7 states, Bennett replied, plus coordination with allied intelligence services for
We need
targets
clear
who have fled to
documentation of the
overseas
bruising on the
locations.
forearms.
When
Nurse,
we
if you
trigger
could
the
place the ruler
takedown,
next to
we'll
the
be
ACE
dismantling an
bandage.
espionage
Doctor.
network
Hold still,
that's been
please.
operating for at
Is he
least
making
3
contact?
years.
Not
Ember
yet,
watched
Admiral.
Savage's activities on
approaching
the
the target
surveillance
building now.
monitors,
We
noting
have
the
ACE
practiced
on him.
efficiency with which he accessed and photographed classified material. His technique suggested extensive training in information acquisition, far beyond what normal SEAL operations would
insert here
require.
at 0400,
Someone had
avoiding
invested
the coastal
significant
radar
time
array.
and resources in
Confirmed.
teaching him to
Secure
steal
the marina
military
extraction
secrets. Timeline for the transfer? She asked. 1645 hours, Bennett replied. He's
What's the
scheduled to
status?
meet his handler at a marina in La
We have
Jolla.
incoming.
Civilian location, plenty of witnesses, multiple escape routes. They have chosen well from an operational security standpoint, but not well enough,
Get down!
Cross
Get down on
added
the
with
ground now!
satisfaction. We've
Hands
had that
behind your
location
back.
under surveillance
You
for
are under
6
arrest.
weeks. Every boat, every vehicle, every
Operation
person
Ace
who
is
approaches
officially
that
a
marina
success.
has been
All objectives
identified
met.
and tracked.
A testament
The
to your
surveillance
team's
monitors
precision,
showed
Commander.
Savage completing his data acquisition
Hellman,
and
this
preparing
data
to leave
confirms
the
the
briefing room.
effectiveness of the
His
ACE
movements
system.
remained
The
casual,
passive sonar
professional,
arrays detected the
giving no
contact at 20
indication that he
miles, well
understood the
outside the
scope
threat
of the
envelope.
investigation closing around him. Military police personnel shadowed him at distances that maintained the illusion of normal activity, while ensuring he couldn't
We have the
deviate from
facility in
approved
sight.
routes.
Preparing
Phase 2
for final
commencing,
approach.
Sullivan reported. Target is departing the facility. GPS tracking confirms he's proceeding toward the predetermined meeting point. Ember stood from her monitoring
This is a
position,
classified
testing her
zone.
balance
You are not
and range of
authorized to be
motion.
here.
The
Who
medical
gave you these
evaluation
codes?
had
I accessed
confirmed
them
no
myself,
serious
Commander.
injuries, but the
The
assault had
anomaly
taken a
is
toll
escalating.
that would affect
You
her
are
performance
testing
for
my
days.
patience, specialist.
Nevertheless,
Stand down.
I know
operational
what you
requirements
did.
took precedence over personal comfort.
I'm not moving.
Request permission to observe
You
the
are out
arrest
of line,
operation
specialist.
directly,
That bruise
she said to
proves you're a
Bennett.
liability.
Denied.
Look at her.
You've been
The Great Blue Hope is
compromised,
scared.
and your presence
Your
at the
opinion
arrest
is
site
noted,
could
Commander.
create
I
complications
told you,
if
I am
defense
ready for
attorneys
Ace.
claim
That
entrapment
incident
or
was an
excessive
anomaly.
surveillance.
The review
Sir,
board disagrees.
I've invested
You're
8
grounded
months in
until
building
further
this
notice.
case. I'd like to see its conclusion. Bennett studied her carefully, noting the determination that persisted despite obvious fatigue and injury. Admiral Sterling, you've sacrificed more for this operation than anyone should be asked to endure. Let the arrest teams complete their work. Your part in this mission has been exemplary, and it's finished. Cross moved to the communication console and activated secure channels that connected their facility with law enforcement
I want this room
agencies
cleared.
positioned around
Now.
the arrest site.
Everyone out.
All stations, report readiness status. Responses came back in rapid succession, confirming that surveillance teams, arrest squads, and technical support personnel were in position to execute what had become the largest counter-espionage operation in recent naval history. Coast Guard cutter stationed at the harbor entrance, one voice reported. No
Look at you.
unauthorized
Pathetic.
vessels
You're a
detected in
disgrace
the
to that
operational
uniform.
area.
I don't care who you know,
FBI
you follow
cyber
my
unit
rules or you're
confirms
done.
Target's communication
Is that
device
clear?
is transmitting
should
encrypted
let go
data
of my
to
arm,
known foreign
Commander.
intelligence servers, came another
You're
report.
making a scene.
We're documenting the complete transmission for evidence purposes. NCIS arrest
really
team
hit
in
him hard.
position at marina parking areas. Visual
Yeah, Ace is
confirmation
not
on
gonna
target
like this.
vehicle approaching the meeting point. The operation had achieved a complexity that reflected months of planning and coordination between agencies that normally operated independently.
You were ordered to
Savage's
stand down,
activities
Commander.
had
Explain
provided
your
the
actions.
final evidence
My
needed
priority
to
was the
prosecute
asset.
not just
The
individual
mission
criminals,
parameters
but an
changed when they
entire
engaged.
network of foreign intelligence operatives who had been systematically stealing
see the
American
Admiral's
military
face?
technology.
I can't
Bennett
believe this is
activated the main
happening.
communication channel that would coordinate
Admirals,
all
the current
elements
force
of the
deployment
arrest
leaves the flank
operation.
exposed.
All
If we reroute the
stations,
7th
this
Fleet
is
through the
control.
HA gap, we can
Target is
secure the
approaching
objective by
final
0600,
phase.
Commander Savage.
Maintain surveillance posture until arrest signal is given. Remember, we need documentation of the actual handoff before we can proceed. Through
We
the
need
surveillance
clear
monitors,
documentation of
they
the
watched
bruising on the
Savage's
forearm.
vehicle enter the
Nurse,
marina
if you could
parking
place the
area
ruler
and
next to the
proceed toward a
ACE
slip
bandage.
where a
Right away,
civilian
Doctor.
fishing
Hold
boat
still,
waited.
please.
The boat
Is he
appeared
making
ordinary,
contact?
the kind of
Not yet,
recreational
Admiral.
vessel that
He's
thousands
approaching
of
the
people
target building
used
now.
for weekend fishing
We have
trips.
ACE on him.
But intelligence analysis had revealed connections to a shell corporation with ties to foreign military services. Target is exiting his vehicle, Sullivan reported. He's carrying
We
a
can
small
insert here at
backpack and
0400,
proceeding on
avoiding
foot
the coastal
towards
radar
slip
array.
47.
Confirmed.
The tension in the
Secure
monitoring
marina
room
extraction
increased
point.
dramatically as months of investigation approached its conclusion.
here.
Every person present understood that the next
What's the
few
status?
minutes would determine whether Operation
We have
Deep Watch
incoming.
succeeded in protecting billions of dollars worth of submarine technology, or whether the personal cost of the mission had compromised its ultimate effectiveness. Bear watched the surveillance feeds with professional
Hands behind your
detachment,
back.
but something in
You
her
are under
posture
arrest.
suggested the emotional weight of seeing someone she had served
Operation
alongside
Ace is
about to be
officially a
arrested for
success.
treason.
All
The
objectives
personal
met.
betrayal was secondary to
testament to your
operational
team's precision,
necessity, but it
Commander.
remained present nonetheless.
Gentlemen, this
If this
data
story
confirms
gave
the
you
effectiveness
chills
of
and
the
made you
ACE
believe in
system.
justice
The
again,
passive sonar arrays
show some
detected the
love with a
contact at
like
20
and
miles,
subscribe.
well outside the
And
threat
stick
envelope.
around because I've got another incredible military story that's going to leave you speechless. You won't want to miss it. Target has made contact with an
We have the
individual on the
facility in
fishing
sight.
boat, came the report from
Preparing
the
for
surveillance
final
team.
approach.
They're exchanging materials. We have visual confirmation of document transfer and what appears to be payment exchange. Bennett leaned forward, his hand
is a
hovering over the
classified zone. You are
communication
not
switch
authorized to
that
be
would
here.
trigger
Who gave
arrests
you these
across
codes?
multiple
I
time
accessed them
zones
myself, Commander.
simultaneously.
The anomaly
All
is
stations,
escalating.
prepare for
You are
execution
testing
on my
patience,
command.
Specialist.
The marina
Stand down.
surveillance
I
showed
know what
Savage
you
stepping
did.
aboard the fishing boat, where he was
I'm
greeted
not
by a
moving.
man whose appearance had been
You are out
cataloged
of
through
line,
months of
Specialist.
intelligence
That
gathering.
bruise proves
The
you're a
individual
liability.
represented a
Look at her.
foreign
The
intelligence
Great Blue Hope
service
is
that had been
scared.
systematically
opinion is
targeting
noted,
American
Commander.
military
I told you, I
technology,
am ready
using
for Ace.
recruited assets
That
like
incident was
Savage
an
to acquire
anomaly.
information
The review
that would
board
take
disagrees.
DEGDs and
You're
billions of
grounded
dollars
until
to
further
develop
notice.
independently. Document transfer confirmed, the surveillance team reported. Target is receiving what appears to be payment in cash. Both parties are examining materials that appear consistent with classified technical documentation. Execute, Bennett commanded. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Coast Guard vessels that had been positioned beyond the harbor entrance moved rapidly toward the marina, cutting off potential escape routes by water.
I want this room cleared.
FBI
now.
arrest teams
Everyone
emerged
out.
from concealed positions throughout the marina complex, surrounding the fishing boat with a precision that reflected months of planning. Police vehicles blocked every exit from the marina parking area, ensuring that neither Savage nor his contact could flee by land. Military police personnel, who had been shadowing Savage's movements throughout the day, positioned themselves to provide additional security and testimony for legal proceedings. The arrest unfolded with professional efficiency that left no opportunity for resistance or escape.
You should let go of my
Within
arm,
minutes,
Commander.
both Savage and his foreign contact
making a
were in
scene.
custody, along with the backpack containing stolen submarine technology specifications
really
and
hit him
payment
hard.
that would provide evidence of espionage activities.
Yeah, Ace is not
But the
gonna like
marina
this.
arrest was only the beginning. Across the United States, coordinated law enforcement actions were simultaneously dismantling every element of the espionage network
You
that
were
had been
ordered to
stealing
stand down,
American
Commander.
submarine
Explain your
technology.
My
FBI
priority was
agents
the asset.
executed search warrants
mission
at the
parameters
homes
changed
and
when they
offices of
engaged.
military contractors who had been providing access to classified
Did you see
facilities.
the Admiral's face?
NCIS investigators
believe this
arrested
is
Navy
happening.
personnel who had been supplying technical
Admirals, the current force
documentation
deployment leaves
in
the flank
exchange for
exposed.
payments that
If we reroute the
significantly
7th Fleet through the
exceeded their
HA gap,
military
we can secure the
salaries.
objective by
Coast Guard
0600,
investigative
Commander
service
Savage.
personnel intercepted communication networks that had been transmitting stolen information to foreign intelligence services, documenting
We need
transmission
clear
methods
documentation
and
of the bruising
encryption
on the forearm.
techniques that would provide
Nurse, if you could
evidence
place
for
the ruler
international
next to the
diplomatic
ACE bandage.
protests.
Right away, Doctor. Hold
The
still,
scope of
please.
the operation
Is he
reflected
making
the
contact?
magnitude of the threat
Not yet,
that had
Admiral.
been discovered
He's
through
approaching the
Ember's
target building now.
investigation. What
We
had
have
appeared to
ACE
be
on.
isolated incidents of technology theft had actually represented systematic espionage targeting the foundation of American submarine warfare capabilities. In the monitoring
We can
room,
insert
status
here at
reports arrived in
0400,
rapid
avoiding the
succession
coastal
as
radar
arrest
array.
teams across the country
Confirmed. Secure the
reported
marina
successful
extraction point.
apprehension of suspects who had been stealing military secrets
I'm
for
here.
years. The coordination required to
What's the
execute
status?
simultaneous arrests in multiple
We have incoming.
jurisdictions demonstrated the seriousness with which the highest levels of government viewed the threat to national security. 18 arrests confirmed, Cross reported, reading from updates that arrived through secure communication channels. Total includes 3 flag officers, 7 civilian
Operation Ace is
contractors,
officially a
and 8
success.
active
All
duty
objectives
personnel across 4 different
testament
commands.
to your team's
The
precision,
numbers
Commander.
represented careers destroyed,
Gentlemen,
lives
this data
ruined,
confirms the
and
effectiveness
families
of the
shattered
ACE
by
system.
decisions to
The passive
prioritize
sonar arrays
personal
detected
gain
the
over
contact
national
at 20
security.
miles,
But
well
they
outside
also
the threat
represented a
envelope.
threat to American submarine superiority that had been neutralized before it could compromise operations that kept hundreds of thousands of Navy personnel safe in
We have the
hostile
facility
waters.
in sight.
Bennett activated the
Preparing for
communication
final
system that
approach.
connected their facility with the highest levels of military command. Pentagon Control, this is Operation Deep Watch. Mission completion confirmed.
This is a
All
classified zone.
primary
You are
objectives
not authorized to
achieved
be
with
here.
minimal
Who gave you these
complications.
codes?
I
The
accessed
response
them
carried
myself,
authority
Commander.
that extended
The
to the
anomaly is
Secretary of
escalating.
Defense and
You are
beyond.
testing
Deep
my
Watch
patience,
Control,
specialist.
Pentagon
Stand
acknowledges
down.
mission
I know what you
success.
did.
Stand by for debrief schedule
not moving.
and personnel
You
reassignment
are out of line,
protocols.
specialist.
Ember
That
listened to the
bruise proves your
communications that
reliability.
concluded 8
Look at
months
her.
of
The Great
investigation
Blue Hope is
with a
scared.
mixture of
Your opinion
professional
is noted,
satisfaction
Commander. I
and
told you,
personal
I am ready for
exhaustion
Ace.
that reflected the
That
true
incident
cost
was
of
an
undercover
anomaly.
operations.
The review board
She had
disagrees.
sacrificed her
You're grounded
identity,
until further
endured
notice.
systematic harassment, and accepted physical assault to build a case that would protect submarine technology worth billions of dollars. The success of Operation Deep Watch would never be publicly acknowledged. The arrests would be reported as separate incidents involving military personnel who had violated security protocols with no mention of the coordinated espionage network, or the undercover admiral who had risked everything
this
to
room
expose
cleared.
it.
Now.
That anonymity
Everyone
was
out.
the price of effective intelligence operations, but it was also the burden carried by personnel who served at levels where recognition was impossible and gratitude could never be expressed publicly. Admiral Cross approached Ember as the monitoring room began to return to normal operational tempo. Admiral Sterling, on behalf of the Pacific Fleet and the submarine warfare
at you.
community,
Pathetic.
I want to
You're a
acknowledge what
disgrace
you've
to that
accomplished.
uniform. I don't
Black
care who you
Neptune
know, you
missions
follow my
require
rules or you're
sacrifices
done.
that most officers
that
will
clear?
never be asked to make.
You should let
and
go
you've
of my
performed
arm,
beyond
Commander.
any reasonable expectation.
You're making
Bennett
a
joined
scene.
them, his expression mixing professional approval with personal concern. The question
Really
now
hit him
is,
hard.
what happens next? Your cover identity
Ace
has
is
been
not gonna like
completely
this.
compromised. making future undercover operations impossible. We need to discuss your next assignment and how to utilize your experience in ways that don't require personal
You were ordered to
sacrifice at
stand
this
down,
level.
Commander. Explain your
Ember
actions.
considered the question
My
carefully.
priority was the asset.
8 months of pretending to
mission
be someone
parameters
else had
changed
taken
when
a
they
psychological toll that would require time to process completely.
Did you
But the
see the
success of
Admiral's face?
Operation Deepwatch had
can't
also
believe this is
demonstrated the
happening.
effectiveness of deep cover investigations
Admirals, the
in
current
cases
force
where
deployment leaves
traditional
the flank
methods
exposed.
failed to
If we
penetrate
reroute the 7th
sophisticated
Fleet through the
espionage
HA gap, we can
networks.
secure the objective by
Sir,
0600,
how many
Commander
other
Savage.
technology theft investigations are currently stalled due to insufficient evidence or operational security concerns? Cross consulted his
We
tablet,
need clear
accessing
documentation of the
classified
bruising on the
files that
forearm.
contained information
Nurse, if
about
you could place
ongoing
the ruler next to the
counterintelligence
ACE
efforts.
bandage.
Right away,
At least
Doctor. Hold
12
still,
major
please.
cases involving
making
everything from
contact?
aircraft carrier
Not yet, Admiral.
technology to
He's
missile
approaching the
defense
target building now.
systems. The
We have
methods used in
ACE
your
on him.
investigation could be adapted to address several of them. Then I request assignment to the Black Neptune program on a permanent basis. The personal cost is acceptable given the potential
We can
to
insert here
protect
at
military
0400,
technology
avoiding
that
the
keeps
coastal radar
American
array.
personnel safe.
Confirmed.
Bennett
Secure the
studied her
marina
with the
extraction
expression of someone who had commanded operations where personnel
here.
made decisions that reflected values more important than
What's the
personal
status?
comfort. Admiral,
We
you
have
understand
incoming.
that accepting permanent assignment to Black Neptune means giving up traditional career advancement, public recognition, and normal military service. Your identity will remain classified. Your achievements will never be acknowledged, and your sacrifices will be invisible to everyone except a handful
Operation
of
Ace
people
is officially
with
a
the highest
success.
security
All objectives
clearances.
met.
I understand,
A
sir.
testament to your team's
I also
precision,
understand
Commander.
that protecting American military
Gentlemen, this data
superiority
confirms the
requires
effectiveness
people
of the
willing to
ACE
make those
system.
sacrifices.
The passive sonar
If
arrays
my
detected the
experience can help
contact at 20
identify
miles,
and
well
neutralize
outside the
future
threat envelope.
threats, then the personal cost is justified. The conversation represented a decision that would shape the remainder of Ember's military career. But it also reflected the
We have the
reality
facility
that
in
national
sight.
security required
Preparing for
personnel
final approach.
willing to operate in shadows where recognition was impossible and success could never be celebrated publicly. Cross activated his communication system to contact
This is a
Pentagon
classified
personnel
zone. You are not
who
authorized
managed
to be
assignments
here.
for the
Who
most
gave you these
classified
codes?
military
I accessed them
operations.
myself, Commander.
Personnel
The
Command,
anomaly is
this is
escalating.
Admiral Cross.
You are
Request
testing my
immediate
patience,
consultation
specialist.
regarding
Stand
permanent
down.
assignment
I know what you
protocols
did.
for Black Neptune operations.
I'm not moving.
Priority, urgent.
out of line,
Security
specialist.
classification,
That bruise proves your
special
liability.
access
Look at
required.
her.
The
The
Great
response
Blue Hope is
confirmed
scared.
that Ember's
Your
request
opinion
would
is noted,
require
Commander.
approval from
I told you,
authorities
I
at the
am ready
highest
for
levels
ACE.
of government,
That
but
incident
her
was an
demonstrated
anomaly.
effectiveness
The
in
review board
Operation
disagrees.
Deepwatch
You're
provided
grounded
strong
until further
justification for considering such an assignment. While they waited for personnel decisions to be processed through classified channels, the immediate aftermath of the arrest operation required attention to details that would ensure successful prosecution of everyone involved in the espionage network. Legal proceedings against 18 suspects would require months of preparation, with evidence that included intercepted communications, financial records,
I want this
and
room
technical
cleared.
documentation
Now.
that
Everyone
proved
out.
systematic theft of classified information. Each case needed to be constructed carefully to prevent defense attorneys from claiming entrapment or unauthorized surveillance. Admiral Blake, who had remained at the facility to observe the operation's conclusion, approached with updates about the scope of evidence that had been collected during the arrest phase. Legal review confirms we have sufficient
Look at you.
documentation to
Pathetic.
support
You're a
espionage
disgrace to
charges
that
against
uniform.
all
I
primary
don't care who you
suspects.
know, you follow my
Financial
rules or you're
evidence
done.
shows payments totaling
that
over
clear?
$2.3
should
million
let go of my
in
arm,
exchange
Commander.
for technical information, worth
You're making a
approximately
scene.
$4.7 billion. The financial disparity illustrated the devastating effectiveness
hit him
of
hard.
espionage operations that could acquire
Yeah,
decades
Ace
of
is not
research
gonna
and
like this.
development for relatively modest payments to recruited assets. The long-term strategic damage to American submarine capabilities could have been incalculable if the network had
You
continued
were ordered to
operating
stand down,
undetected.
Commander. Explain
What's
your
the
actions.
timeline for
My
court-martial
priority was the
proceedings?
asset.
Bennett asked.
The mission parameters
6 to 8
changed
months
when
for
they
preparation,
engaged.
then individual trials that could extend over 2
Did you
years,
see the Admiral's
Blake
face?
replied.
I
The
can't believe
complexity
this
of
is
proving
happening.
systematic espionage rather than
Admirals, the current
isolated
force
incidents
deployment leaves the
requires
flank
extensive
exposed. If we
documentation
reroute the 7th
and
Fleet through the
coordination
HA gap,
between
we can
multiple
secure the
legal
objective by
jurisdictions.
0600, Commander
Ember would be
Savage.
required to provide testimony that would remain classified, describing her investigation methods and the evidence she had gathered while maintaining her undercover
We need clear
identity.
documentation
The
of
legal
the bruising on the
proceedings would
forearm.
represent another
Nurse, if
form
you
of
could place
service
the
that
ruler next to
required
the ACE
personal
bandage.
sacrifice
Right away, Doctor.
for
Hold still,
institutional
please.
protection.
Is he making
But
contact?
before those proceedings
Not yet,
could
Admiral.
begin,
He's
Operation
approaching the target
Deepwatch
building now.
required
We have
formal
ACE on
conclusion
him.
through briefings that would document lessons learned and establish protocols for future Black Neptune missions. At 1700 hours, the Joint Maritime Intelligence Center's most secure briefing room hosted a gathering of officials whose combined authority extended to every level of American military and intelligence operations. Fleet Admiral Bennett presided over participants who included the heads of Pacific and Atlantic Fleet Operations, the Director of Naval Intelligence, representatives from the FBI and CIA, and congressional oversight personnel whose security clearances allowed them to review the most sensitive national security operations. Ember stood at the front of the briefing room, her uniform displaying the Rear Admiral stars that had remained hidden throughout 8 months of investigation. The bruising on her face had darkened to deep purple and yellow patterns that provided visible evidence of the personal cost required to complete her mission successfully. Honorable members, she began, Operation Deep Watch was initiated to investigate suspected compromise of advanced submarine warfare technology. What we discovered was systematic espionage targeting the foundation of American underwater supremacy. Technical displays around the briefing room showed the scope of information that had been stolen, including sonar detection algorithms, submarine acoustic signatures, torpedo guidance systems, and navigation protocols that represented decades of classified research. The strategic value to hostile nations was beyond calculation. The espionage network included 18 individuals across multiple military commands, civilian contractor organizations, and foreign intelligence services. Their activities compromised technology worth $4.7 billion in development costs, with strategic implications that could have affected submarine operations for the next decade. Congressional Representative Patricia Hamilton, who chaired the House Armed Services Committee's Intelligence Subcommittee, leaned forward with an expression that mixed appreciation with concern. Admiral Sterling, your investigation prevented catastrophic damage to our submarine warfare capabilities. However, the methods required to complete this mission raise questions about the personal cost we ask military personnel to accept. The physical assault you endured was beyond anything that should be required of any service member, she continued. What safeguards can be implemented to protect personnel conducting similar operations in the future? Ember considered the question carefully, understanding that her response would influence policy decisions affecting future Black Neptune operations. Representative Hamilton, undercover investigations inherently involve personal risk that cannot be eliminated through administrative safeguards. However, that risk can be minimized through better communication protocols, enhanced surveillance support, and clearer extraction procedures for situations that exceed acceptable danger thresholds. CIA Director Matthews, who had remained silent throughout most of the briefing, spoke with the authority that came from decades of managing intelligence operations where personnel safety conflicted with mission requirements. Admiral Sterling, intelligence operations frequently require individuals to accept personal risk for national security objectives. Your performance demonstrates that military personnel can conduct effective deep cover investigations when provided with appropriate support and clear mission parameters. The question is whether the Navy is prepared to institutionalize Black Neptune operations as a permanent capability with dedicated personnel and resources for long-term undercover assignments. Fleet Admiral Bennett responded with the kind of strategic thinking that had shaped his 3-decade career. The success of Operation Deep Watch demonstrates that traditional counterintelligence methods are insufficient against sophisticated espionage networks that have adapted to conventional security measures. We need capabilities that can penetrate conspiracies where suspects are too careful for normal surveillance and too well connected for standard investigation techniques. The briefing continued for 2 hours, covering every aspect of Operation Deep Watch, from initial intelligence gathering through the final arrest operations. Participants discussed budget requirements, legal authorities, personnel selection criteria, and international cooperation agreements that would be necessary to expand Black Neptune capabilities. When the formal presentations concluded, Ember remained in the briefing room for individual consultations with officials who needed detailed information about specific aspects of her investigation. The conversations would continue for days as prosecutors prepared cases against 18 suspects and intelligence analysts worked to understand the full scope of compromised information. But the most significant conversation occurred when congressional oversight personnel departed and only the highest-ranking military officials remained. Fleet Admiral Bennett, activated security protocols that ensured their discussion would remain classified at levels above even the Operation Deep Watch briefing.
For final approach.
Admiral Sterling, he said quietly, your request for permanent assignment to Black Neptune operations has been reviewed at the highest levels of government.
This is a
The
classified
Secretary
zone.
of Defense
You are
and
not
the Chairman
authorized
of the
to be
Joint
here.
Chiefs
Who gave you these
have
codes?
approved your
I
transfer
accessed
to a
them myself,
classified
Commander.
unit that will
The
conduct
anomaly is
similar
escalating.
investigations
You are
on a
testing my
permanent
patience,
basis.
specialist.
The
Stand
authorization
down.
represented
I know what you
recognition
did.
that espionage threats to American
moving.
military technology
You are
required
out of line,
dedicated
specialist.
personnel
That bruise
willing to
proves your
operate in
liability.
ways that
Look at
traditional military
The Great Blue Hope
service
is
couldn't
scared.
accommodate.
Your opinion is
Ember
noted,
would become
Commander.
part of an
I told you,
organization
I
that
am ready
existed
for
in the
ace.
shadows
That
between
incident was
military
an anomaly.
and
The
intelligence
review board
operations,
disagrees. You're
with
grounded until
responsibilities
further
that
notice.
extended far beyond normal naval duties. Your new assignment will require you to relocate to a facility that doesn't officially exist, with an identity that will remain classified for the remainder of your career. Are you prepared to accept those conditions? Ember thought about the question seriously, understanding that her decision would affect not only her personal future, but also the development of capabilities that could protect American military
I want this room
superiority
cleared.
against
Now.
increasingly
Everyone out.
sophisticated threats. Yes, sir. I understand the requirements and accept the assignment. Bennett nodded with satisfaction that reflected both professional approval and personal respect for someone willing to sacrifice normal career expectations for national security objectives. Your official transfer will be processed through channels that will maintain the security
Look
of
at
both
you.
your identity
Pathetic.
and your new
You're a disgrace to
organization.
that uniform.
Report to
I
the
don't care
address
who
in
you
these
know,
sealed
you follow
orders
my
at
rules or you're
0800
done.
hours next
Is that
Monday.
clear?
He handed her an
You should let go
envelope
of my
marked with
arm,
security
Commander.
classifications that exceeded
You're
even her
making a
current
scene.
clearance level. Admiral Sterling, your service has been exemplary, and your sacrifice
She really
has
hit him
protected
hard.
capabilities that keep hundreds of thousands of Navy
Ace is
personnel
not gonna
safe.
like this.
That contribution will never be publicly acknowledged, but it will never be forgotten by those who understand its importance. The formal conclusion of Operation Deep Watch represented
You were ordered
both
to
an
stand
ending
down,
and a
Commander.
beginning.
Explain your actions.
Ember's
My
investigation had
priority was the
successfully
asset.
neutralized an
The mission
espionage
parameters
network
changed
that
when they
threatened
engaged.
American submarine warfare capabilities. But it had also demonstrated
Did
the
you see
need
the
for
Admiral's
permanent
face?
capabilities to address
can't
similar
believe this is
threats that
happening.
would inevitably emerge. As
Admirals,
military
the current force
officials
deployment
departed
leaves
from
the
the
flank
briefing room,
exposed. If we
Ember
reroute
remained
the 7th
alone
Fleet
for a
through the
few
HA
minutes,
gap, we can secure the
processing the
objective by
reality that her
0600,
life
Commander
had
Savage.
fundamentally changed in ways that could never be reversed. She would no longer be a traditional Navy officer with normal career expectations and public
We need
recognition
clear
for
documentation
achievements.
of the bruising on the
Instead,
forearm.
she would
Nurse,
become
if you
part
could
of an
place the ruler
organization
next
that
to the ACE
operated in the
bandage.
deepest
Right away,
shadows
Doctor.
of
Hold
national
still, please.
security, conducting
making
missions that
contact?
required personal
Not yet, Admiral.
sacrifices
He's
most
approaching the
people
target
could never
building now.
understand or
We have
appreciate.
ACE on him.
But she would also be protecting American military capabilities that kept the nation safe from threats that could never be discussed publicly. Working with personnel who shared her commitment to service above
We can
personal
insert here at
recognition.
0400,
The choice was
avoiding the
difficult,
coastal
but it was
radar array.
also clear.
Confirmed.
At
Secure the
1930
marina extraction
hours,
point.
Ember Sterling walked out of the Joint Maritime Intelligence Center
I'm here.
for the last time as a traditional Navy officer.
What's the status?
Her next assignment would take her to
We have
places that
incoming.
didn't appear on any organizational chart, working with people whose names would never be mentioned in official reports, conducting missions that would never be acknowledged by anyone outside the smallest possible circle of government
Hands behind your
officials.
back.
The sunset
You are
painted
under
San
arrest.
Diego Bay in shades of gold and crimson that reminded her why she had chosen military service in the first place. The beauty of the
A testament
California
to your team's
coast
precision,
represented
Commander.
freedom that required protection,
Gentlemen, this
values
data
that
confirms
demanded
the effectiveness of
sacrifice,
the ACE
and a
system.
way of life
The
that was
passive
worth
sonar arrays
defending
detected the
against any
contact
threat.
At 20 miles, well outside
Tomorrow
the threat
she would
envelope.
begin a new career that would test her dedication to those principles in ways that normal military service never could. But tonight, she could watch the sunset
We have
and
the
appreciate the
facility in
knowledge
sight,
that Operation Deep
preparing
Watch
for
had
final
succeeded in
approach.
protecting capabilities that would keep American submarines superior in waters around the world. The evening air carried the sound of ships' horns from vessels entering and
This is a
departing the
classified
harbor,
zone.
a
You are not
reminder that
authorized to be
maritime
here. Who
operations
gave you these
continued
codes?
around the
I
clock
accessed them
to
myself,
maintain the
Commander.
security
The
that most
anomaly is
Americans took for
escalating.
granted.
You are testing
Those
my
operations were
patience,
now
specialist.
safer because
Stand down.
18
you
espionage
did.
suspects were in custody,
I'm
instead
not
of
moving.
stealing technology that could
You
have
are out of line,
compromised submarine
specialist.
missions
That
for
bruise
years to
proves your
come.
liability.
Ember's phone
Look at her.
buzzed with an
Great
encrypted
Blue Hope
message
is
from
scared.
Admiral Bennett.
Your opinion is
Sterling,
noted, Commander.
final
I
personnel
told
meeting
you, I
tomorrow
am
at
ready
Eero
for ace.
700.
That incident
Bring
was an
personal gear
anomaly.
for extended
The review board
assignment.
disagrees.
Your service to the
You're
Navy
grounded
and the
until
nation
further notice.
continues at the highest levels. Well done. She responded with a simple acknowledgement, then deleted the message according to security protocols that had become second nature during 8 months of undercover operations. Her new assignment would require even stricter operational security, with communications that left no electronic traces and activities that could never be discussed with anyone lacking the highest possible security clearances. But the fundamental purpose remained the same: protecting American military capabilities against threats that required extraordinary measures to defeat. The next morning brought crisp October air and the kind of clear skies that made San Diego a preferred location for military installations that needed perfect weather for testing advanced technology. Ember reported to the Joint Maritime Intelligence Center at 0700 hours, carrying personal gear that represented everything she would take to her new assignment. Admiral Bennett met her in the same briefing room where Operation Deep Watch had been planned,
Commander.
but this time the space contained only basic furniture and communication equipment. The advanced displays and classified technology had been secured, leaving a room that appeared suitable for routine administrative meetings.
Gonna like this.
Admiral Sterling, Bennett said, your transport will arrive in 30 minutes. Before you depart, there are final details about your new assignment that require discussion. He activated a secure communication system that provided direct connection to the highest levels of government. Your new organization doesn't have an official name, budget line, or organizational chart. For administrative purposes, you'll be assigned to a Navy research facility that conducts classified technology development. Your actual duties will involve investigations similar to Operation Deep Watch, but with targets that may include foreign intelligence services, terrorist organizations, and domestic threats to military security. The scope of responsibility was broader than anything Ember had imagined when she requested permanent assignment to Black Neptune operations. Her new role would extend far beyond counterintelligence within the Navy to encompass threats that crossed all service boundaries and national borders. Personnel in your organization operate with significant autonomy, but also with responsibility for results that can affect national security at the strategic level. Failure isn't just professional disappointment, it's potential compromise of military capabilities that protect millions of Americans. Bennett paused to ensure she understood the magnitude of what she was accepting. Are you prepared for that level of responsibility? Yes, sir. I understand the stakes and accept the responsibility. A secure communication channel activated, providing audio connection to an authority that Bennett acknowledged with immediate attention. Admiral Sterling is prepared for transfer, he reported. The response carried the unmistakable authority of someone accustomed to making decisions that shape national policy. Admiral Sterling, your performance in Operation Deep Watch demonstrates exactly the kind of dedication and capability we need for ongoing operations. Your new assignment will challenge you in ways that traditional military service never could, but it will also provide opportunities to protect American security interests at levels that few officers ever reach. Report to your new commander with the understanding that your mission is to identify and neutralize threats that conventional military and intelligence operations cannot address effectively. Your success will be measured not by traditional promotion criteria, but by your ability to protect American military capabilities against increasingly sophisticated adversaries. Ember stood at attention despite being alone except for Admiral Bennett. I understand, sir. I'm ready to serve. Outstanding. Your transport is approaching the facility now. Admiral Bennett will provide final operational details during your transfer. The communication ended, leaving Ember and Bennett to wait for transportation that would take her to an assignment that represented the culmination of everything she had learned during 8 months of undercover investigation. When the aircraft arrived, it appeared to be a standard military transport helicopter conducting routine personnel transfer between naval facilities. Nothing about its appearance suggested that it was carrying a rear admiral to an assignment that would remain classified for the remainder of her career. Bennett accompanied her to the landing area, where the helicopter waited with rotors already turning.
Everyone out!
Admiral Sterling, he said, his voice raised slightly to carry over engine noise. Your investigation prevented catastrophic damage to American submarine capabilities. More importantly, it demonstrated that military personnel can conduct effective deep cover operations when the stakes justify extraordinary measures. The organization you're joining will ask you to accept similar challenges on a regular basis. Each mission will test your dedication to service above personal recognition, duty above personal comfort, and national security above individual career advancement. Ember boarded the helicopter with her personal gear, taking a seat that faced backward toward the Joint Maritime Intelligence Center as the aircraft lifted off. Through the window, she could see the facility where Operation Deepwatch had been planned and executed, where she had spent 8 months preparing for a mission that had changed her understanding of service and sacrifice. As the helicopter gained altitude and turned toward its classified destination, she could see the Pacific Ocean stretching toward the horizons where American submarines operated with capabilities that remained secure because 18 espionage suspects were in custody instead of stealing technology worth billions of dollars. The view reminded her that individual sacrifice was meaningful only when it served purposes larger than personal advancement, protecting capabilities that kept the nation safe from threats that most people would never know existed. Her new assignment would test that understanding in ways that Operation Deepwatch had only begun to explore, but it would also provide opportunities to serve at levels that few officers ever reached. The helicopter flew toward a future that would remain forever classified, carrying a Rear Admiral whose achievements would never be publicly acknowledged, but whose service would protect American security interests in ways that traditional military operations could never match. Below them, the California coast sparkled in morning sunlight that illuminated waters where American naval forces maintained security that required constant vigilance, advanced technology, and personnel willing to sacrifice everything for principles that define the nation's values. Operation Deepwatch was complete, but the mission continued. 3 months later, in a facility that didn't appear on any government organizational chart, Rear Admiral Ember Sterling received an encrypted communication that would define her next mission. The message contained intelligence about a conspiracy that threatened American aircraft carrier technology, involving suspects who were too careful for conventional investigation and too well connected for traditional prosecution methods. The scope of the threat required exactly the kind of deep cover investigation that had made Operation Deepwatch successful, with personnel willing to sacrifice their identities for missions that could never be publicly acknowledged. Ember read the intelligence briefing that described technology theft valued at over $12 billion, involving suspects who included foreign intelligence operatives, defense contractors, and military personnel at the highest levels of aircraft carrier operations. The investigation would require her to assume a new identity, endure months of harassment and intimidation, and accept personal risks that could include physical danger far beyond anything she had experienced during Operation Deepwatch. But it would also provide the opportunity to protect American naval aviation capabilities that kept carrier strike groups superior to any potential adversary, ensuring that American personnel could operate in hostile waters with technological advantages that had been maintained through decades of classified research and development. She activated her secure communication system and transmitted her acceptance of the new assignment, understanding that her decision committed her to another extended period of sacrifice in service of national security objectives that transcended personal comfort or recognition. The message disappeared from her communication system as soon as transmission was confirmed, leaving no electronic record of her decision to accept responsibilities that would test her dedication to service in ways that conventional military duty never could. But it also confirmed her membership in an organization that operated at the highest levels of national security, protecting American military capabilities against threats that required extraordinary measures to defeat. The mission continued, carried forward by personnel whose names would never appear in official reports, but whose service protected the freedom that defined America's place in the world. In facilities that didn't officially exist, using methods that would never be publicly acknowledged, military personnel like Rear Admiral Ember Sterling continued the endless work of protecting national security against adversaries who threatened the technological advantages that kept American forces superior in an increasingly dangerous world. Their sacrifice remained invisible to everyone except the smallest possible circle of officials who understood that freedom required protection by people willing to operate in shadows where recognition was impossible and gratitude could never be expressed publicly. But their service continued, motivated by dedication to principles that transcended personal advancement and commitment to protecting capabilities that kept hundreds of thousands of American military personnel safe in hostile environments around the globe. Operation Deepwatch had ended, but the mission of protecting American military technology against espionage and theft would continue as long as adversaries threatened the security that most Americans took for granted. The story of Rear Admiral Ember Sterling would never be told publicly, but her service would continue in facilities that didn't exist, conducting missions that couldn't be acknowledged, protecting capabilities that kept the nation safe from threats that would never be discussed in congressional hearings or news reports.
We can insert
That
here at
anonymity
0400,
was the price of
avoiding the coastal
effective
radar
intelligence
array.
operations.
Confirmed.
But it was
Secure
also the
marina extraction
foundation of
point.
security that allowed democratic institutions to function
here.
without constant fear of technological compromise.
What's the status?
That could render American military
have incoming.
forces vulnerable to adversaries who sought every possible advantage. The personnel who accepted such responsibilities understood that their individual stories mattered less than the collective protection they provided for values and capabilities that defined American military superiority. Their service continued in silence, measured not by public recognition, but by the
testament to
security
your
of
team's
technology
precision,
that
Commander.
kept American forces superior
Hellman, this
in an
data
increasingly
confirms the effectiveness
competitive
of the
and
ACE
dangerous
system.
world.
The passive
The sunset
sonar arrays
painted the
detected the
California
contact at
coast in
20
shades of
miles, well
gold
outside
and
the threat
crimson
envelope.
that would continue long after individual careers ended. Protected by personnel whose dedication to service transcended personal recognition, and whose commitment
the
to
facility
national
in
security
sight,
provided the
preparing
foundation
for
for
final
freedom
approach.
that defined the nation's character. Operation Deepwatch was complete, but the mission of protecting American military capabilities would continue as long as the
This is a
nation
classified
required
zone.
defense
You are not
against
authorized
threats
to be
that
here.
tested the
Who gave you these
dedication of
codes?
those
I
willing to
accessed them
serve
myself,
in
Commander.
shadows, where
The anomaly
achievement
is
could never be
escalating.
publicly acknowledged.
testing my
That service
patience,
continued,
specialist.
carried
Stand
forward
down.
by personnel
you did.
whose names would remain classified,
I'm
but
not
whose
moving.
sacrifice protected the
You are
security
out of line,
that allowed
specialist.
democracy to
That
flourish in a
proves your
world where
liability.
freedom required
at her.
constant
Blue
vigilance
Hope is
and
scared.
technological
Your opinion is noted,
superiority
Commander.
demanded
I told
protection
you, I
by
am
those
ready for
willing to
ACE.
pay any
That
personal
incident
price
was an
for national
anomaly.
defense.
The review board
The
disagrees.
story ended,
You're
but the
grounded
mission
until further
continued,
notice.
conducted by personnel whose dedication to service above self provided the foundation for security that most Americans would never fully appreciate, but would always depend upon for the protection of values that define the nation's place in history. In facilities that didn't exist, using methods that couldn't be discussed, military personnel continued the work that kept America safe from threats that required extraordinary measures to defeat,
I want this
serving
room
with
cleared.
dedication
Now.
that transcended
Everyone out.
recognition and commitment that exceeded personal advancement. Their service was the foundation of freedom, conducted in silence that protected both the methods they used and the capabilities they defended, ensuring that American military forces retained advantages that had been purchased through decades of sacrifice by personnel whose names would never be remembered, but whose
Look at you.
dedication would never be
Pathetic.
forgotten
You're a
by
disgrace
those
to that
who understood
uniform.
the
I
true
don't care who
cost
you
of
know, you
security
follow my
in a
rules or
dangerous
you're done.
world. Each day
that
brought
clear?
new challenges that
You should
tested
let
their
go of my
resolve.
arm, Commander.
Foreign adversaries who sought to steal
You're
the
making a
technology
scene.
that kept American forces supreme, and domestic threats that required surveillance methods
really
so
hit him hard.
classified that even their existence remained
Yeah,
hidden
Ace
from
is not gonna
congressional
like this.
oversight. These men and women accepted assignments that would separate them from families for years, identities that would become more real than their birth names, and cover stories
You
that
were ordered
demanded
to
they
stand
live
down,
as
Commander.
people they could
Explain your
never
actions.
truly become.
My priority
The
was the
psychological
asset.
toll was
The mission
immeasurable.
parameters changed
Training
when they
prepared them
engaged.
for physical danger, but nothing could fully prepare them for the
you see
isolation
the
of
Admiral's
existing
face?
between worlds.
I can't
Trusted
believe this is
completely by
happening.
no one except their handlers, living
Admirals,
lives
the current
built on
force deployment leaves
foundations
the
of
flank
carefully
exposed.
constructed
If we
lives.
reroute the 7th
They
Fleet
watched
through the HA
colleagues
gap, we
receive
can secure the
promotions and
objective by
recognition
0600,
while their own
Commander Savage.
achievements remained buried in files that would never see daylight. They attended funerals for fallen comrades while unable to explain how they knew the deceased.
We need
Their
clear
grief is
documentation
classified
of
as
the
their
bruising on the
service.
forearm.
The mission
Parents, if you
continued,
could place the
carried
ruler
forward
next
by
to
the
the
best of
ACE
American
bandage.
Right away,
military
Doctor. Hold
personnel,
still, please.
serving at levels
making
that tested the
contact?
limits of
Not yet,
dedication
Admiral.
and sacrifice,
He's approaching the target
protecting
building now.
capabilities
We
that
have
kept the
ACE on
nation
him.
safe from adversaries who would use any advantage to compromise the technological superiority that defined American military dominance. That superiority was protected by personnel
insert here
whose
at
service would
0400,
remain forever
avoiding the coastal radar
classified,
array.
but whose dedication
Confirmed.
provided
Secure
the
the marina
foundation for
extraction point.
security that allowed democracy to prosper in a world
here.
where freedom required constant defense by
What's the
those willing
status?
to sacrifice everything
We
for
have
principles
incoming.
that transcended individual recognition. Operation Deepwatch was complete. The mission of protecting American military capabilities continued, conducted by personnel whose names would never be known, but whose service would never be forgotten by those who understood that freedom required protection by the best of those willing to serve in shadows, where achievement could never be acknowledged
A
publicly.
testament to your
Their
team's
dedication
precision,
continued, measured not by promotion or
Hellman, this data
recognition, but
confirms
by the
the
security of
effectiveness of the ACE
capabilities that
system.
kept
The
American
passive
forces
sonar arrays
superior
detected the
and
contact
American
at 20
personnel
miles,
safe
well outside
in a
the
world
threat
where
envelope.
technological advantage could determine the difference between victory and defeat. freedom and subjugation, security and vulnerability. The
We
story
have
of
the
individual
facility in sight,
sacrifice in service of
preparing
collective
for final
security
approach.
would continue as long as the nation required defense against threats that tested the limits of dedication and commitment, protected by personnel whose service transcended personal
This is a classified
advancement
zone.
and whose
You are not
sacrifice
authorized to be
provided
here.
the
Who gave you
foundation
these
for
codes?
security
I
that
accessed them
defined
myself,
America's
Commander.
ability to
The
defend
anomaly is
democratic
escalating.
values in an
You are
increasingly
testing my
dangerous world.
patience, specialist. Stand down.